Hey, what's up, all? Thanks for joining me. So, yeah, just give it a couple seconds here. Really glad to be back. I had a difficult time. I do home health care. If you saw some of my videos, spent Christmas. I work with people with disabilities, so I spent Christmas with them. Was unable to do all the videos I would like to. So normally I would have done this live stream. I'm going to do them every Thursday at noon unless work interferes. Unfortunately, work interfered. But I'm here Friday for you. So I think it'll be a good Friday. We'll go a couple hours at least here. What's up, WZ? We'll take audience input if anyone has some topic ideas. So I have some things to start off with that I'd like to talk about. So the video I did today, I think, is a very important one. If you haven't checked it out, it's only 5 minutes. One of the things I'm trying to do is, I love doing these live streams. I was talking to my wife about this at dinner last night. I think I'm guilty of this as well. Oftentimes, exactly the type of things I criticize, I end up engaging in myself. So, like, for example, I criticize Hollywood. I'm like, man, I miss old movies that had soul and, like, plot and it was story-driven, and now it's just, like, kind of all these Marvel action movies. Yet when I sit down to watch a movie, I'm usually watching something mindless. It's the same thing with kind of the way I do YouTube videos. I like the longer format. I like these long streams. To me, that's the type of stuff where I think you could actually get information. You could get more than just a soundbite. I think one of the problems, in addition to just the propagandists that are the mainstream media, they're not journalists at all. But even if they were, their format's terrible. These 5-second sound bites where you got 10 people on a panel. You can't get any information in that type of format. So I like the longer videos. But I know that I myself, if I'm sitting down and watching a YouTube video, I probably don't have 2 hours to watch. And so I know that I and other people watch shorter videos. So I really am trying to condense, do like 5-minute videos that aren't live streams and try to be putting them out multiple times a week. Hopefully to get my information out to more people. But I do prefer these live streams. Anyways, that video today was on this idea of Russian propaganda. And you've heard me talk about this on live streams before. Now, one of the things that you hear people like me, Tucker Carlson, and others say over and over is the left, the establishment, the deep state, whatever you want to call them. Look, when I say deep state, words are hard, definitions are hard. It's hard to be very precise. As humans, we have to have identifying monikers, but oftentimes they can be clumsy. So what is a leftist? What is a rightist? When I say deep state, what I'm talking about is kind of the establishment that could be on the right and the left, unelected bureaucrats in the intel community, these politicians that have been there for years, corporate interests, military-industrial complex, the people that run the show. The people that make me and you obsolete where our voice doesn't matter. That's what I'm referring to about deep state. That's why I voted for Trump to out them, and that's exactly what's happened. But we don't need to get into all of that. You understand that. Those people, particularly I'm going to be focusing today on the mainstream media, the intel agencies, and the Democratic establishment, the people that run the Democratic Party. They accuse you of exactly what they do. This is almost like, it's at this point it's almost a law. It's not a theory, it's almost a law where you could bet if they're accusing you of something, they're engaged in that. Like, we can see it in all kinds of instances. Climate change. They accuse you of not caring about the environment as they fly around on private jets. You don't care about illegal immigrants, while meanwhile they live in gated communities and only hire illegal immigrants for cheap labor. You don't care about lives lost, in inner city or poor communities. Like, I live in rural. It's startling to me, and I'm going to talk about this a little later as well. The similarities between poor people in rural areas of the world, like I'm at in rural Pennsylvania, and in inner city poor people. Like, being poor sucks, regardless. There's obviously differences, but they accuse us of not caring about those people. Meanwhile, they live in gated communities and don't do anything personally to ever help those people, etc. The crimes they accuse Trump and of people connected to Trump of, they've almost universally committed those crimes. I still have a standing challenge to anyone. Name me one crime that Trump or the people connected to him have been accused of that haven't been committed by the Democrats or the intel people, either in a greater capacity, a more serious capacity, or a more blatant capacity. The only exception I would give would be annulments. But the only reason for annulments not being something that's been committed by the Democrats is none of them actually had any wealth before they were in office. So it would be hard for them to violate that. But seriously, just take a couple. Obstruction of justice. Oh, Trump obstructed justice by mean tweets and saying he wanted to get rid of Mueller. Meanwhile, Hillary's team deleted subpoenaed evidence. Lying to Congress. Oh, Cohen lied to Congress because he said that conversations about Trump Tower ended in February, but actually they ended in March. Meanwhile, we have Comey blatantly lying about who he released classified information to. We have Brennan lying about whether or not, whether or not the Steele dossier was included in the intelligence community assessment. So we know this, they lied about that. How about lying to the FBI? Flynn, who didn't even lie to the FBI, was accused of it. I've done video after video showing why he didn't lie to the FBI, according to the FBI's own 302s. But meanwhile, we have Mills and Abedin that are on record. We see proof through their emails. They said that they didn't know about Hillary's server until after her tenure as Secretary of State, but we have emails proving they knew about it in 2009. The FBI agent said they thought it defined credulity that Hillary Clinton thought that the C at the top of documents didn't mean classified. Excuse me, got a little heartburn. It didn't mean classified, but was alphabetical order. In other words, defined credulity, that's another way of saying lied. Literally, every single crime they've accused Trump of, they committed. Remember, the entire original case was Trump tried to get dirt on Hillary from Russians. And Hillary's team and the FBI were going to prove that by paying a foreign spy to get dirt on Trump from Russians. Every single thing they accuse. And it's not just the crimes, it's also their behavior. So one of the new talking points is that anytime you suggest that you look into the media, the intel community, or the Democrats for corruption, for crimes they committed, now all of a sudden that's doing Putin's bidding. So let's break this conversation down. What does that mean? Oh, they're spreading Putin's talking points. What was the original allegation we were told? Now, remember, I can't stress this enough when we're talking about what the intelligence community says, what the Democratic Party says, but the intelligence communities particularly. All of the intelligence community, we were told by the Democrats, the media, etc., said that, Putin interfered to help Trump win the election. Remember, this is the same intelligence community, the same FBI, that according to these same groups, the Dems and the media, are just so incompetent. They didn't know. You're not supposed to alter evidence to say the opposite of what it was, to spy on people connected to Trump. They just didn't know. That's how incompetent. Oh, you mean us hand-picked high-level FBI people? Sorry, we didn't get the memo. We weren't supposed to fabricate evidence to say the opposite of what it was. Our bad, just incompetence on our part. But we have to believe them about everything, according to the Dems and media. Anyways, they didn't just say that Putin wanted Trump to win. Which, by the way, even if that's true, is it surprising? Hillary was calling for a no-fly zone. That would have basically been an act of war against Russia. A no-fly zone over Syria. So, yeah, if you're Putin and you, don't want the world to end in nuclear fire, sure, you probably want to vote for the person that's not pushing for war for you. Or you want to support that person. Or you would rather they win. Makes sense to me. I don't see how that's a crime or that's Trump's fault. That would be like saying, if someone ran for office and they ran on the policy of nuke Iran. Oh, it's so weird that Iran, our enemy, didn't want that guy to win. Yeah, no wonder. It doesn't prove corruption. Anyways, all of these intel people, and this makes sense, said that more than picking a particular candidate, Russia's goal is what it's always been. Just like, by the way, if we're honest, everybody wants to scream Russia, 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 because that's the Dem and the establishment talking point, the deep state talking point. But every country does this to us, even our allies. They all want to interfere and curry favor. They want people that will be elected that will curry favor with them, whether you're the UK, Germany, France, or you're our enemy like Russia, etc. They're hoping that people get elected in our system that will be more beneficial to them. So, more than getting a particular person elected, what Russia, as our enemy, wanted to do is the same thing that they always want to do, the same thing China wants to do, the same thing Iran wants to do, which is cause division within the country. So, you cause division by, if you're Russia, theoretically, you say, we'll give one side dirt and the other side dirt and the other, and then they're all spreading this dirt. And if the Republicans and Democrats are fighting with each other, then they're less likely to fight with Russia. That would be the idea. That's what the intelligence community admitted. That was even admitted by Fiona Hill in testimony in the impeachment hearing, the great Democrat witness, right? It was admitted by her. Yes, that's what Russia wanted, to sow division within the country. Now, I've asked person after person, particularly those on the left, can you name me the biggest example, the most effective propaganda released by Kremlin agents that sowed division in this country? We have three. Mueller pointed two out, right? Keep in mind, that was Mueller's job. Mueller's job was to investigate, one, Russia interference, and second, whether or not Trump's team colluded. That was his job. Mueller outlined two examples of Russian interference. The first were the Russian trolls posting on Facebook and Pokemon Go. That's laughable. I've gone over it time after time. Had next to no influence whatsoever. The second is the alleged hack of the DNC and Podesta emails, which I'll admit, if that's true, would be more serious than these Russian trolls. But nonetheless, minimal effect. Compared to the third issue of Russian interference, which for some reason Mueller decided not to talk about. Remember, he was tasked with investigating Russian interference. So don't you think he would have investigated the biggest example of Russian interference? And what that was the Kremlin officials that were the source for Steele's dossier that alleged that Trump and his team were illegally conspiring with Russians to steal the 2016 election. Now, how do I know this was the most successful example of propaganda that caused division in our country? Well, one, it was so successful that the FBI, even after knowing that it was inaccurate, 17 times committed abuses, including manufacturing evidence to say the opposite of what it actually said, to spy on people connected to the Trump campaign. Anything else? Any other Russia propaganda so effective it caused the FBI to break protocol? Nope. How about this? Was there any Russia propaganda that was literally the headline story for 3 years on almost all the mainstream media? Trump-Russia collusion? Nope. Just the allegations in that dossier. How about this? Did any of their Russia propaganda lead to 3 years of investigations? Nope. Just the claims in the dossier. Or how about this? I'll actually show you this real quick. This is from March. Who knows what the numbers still are, but this is from Reuters, just so I'm not accused of right-wing talking points. Despite report findings, almost half of Americans think Trump colluded with Russia. Nearly half of all Americans still believe President Donald Trump worked with Russia to interfere in the 2016 presidential election, according to a new Reuters Ipsos poll conducted after Special Counsel Robert Mueller cleared Trump of that allegation. Any other propaganda from Russia that effective? Half of people polled, half of the country thinks that Trump's a Russian asset? He's committed treason with Russia based on this propaganda? It was all lies. The IG report and the Mueller report showed that this was a lie. Yet half of Americans believe it. The FBI broke protocol to spy on Trump's campaign for it. The mainstream media led with this story every day for 3 years. It's still in the impeachment articles. If you read Article 1 of the impeachment against Trump, it talks about Russia and the need to combat Russia and them trying to interfere to help Trump. That's how successful this Russia propaganda was. For some reason, Mueller didn't even though his number one task was to investigate Russian interference. It just slipped his mind. He forgot to investigate the most significant interference. Whoops. Oh, that dastardly FBI. They're not corrupt, though. They're just horribly incompetent. Mueller's just horribly incompetent. He wasn't corrupt. His team wasn't corrupt. I'll debate anyone in the country on why this wasn't the biggest example of Russian interference. Not according to me. I'm not the one who said, this information came from Russian Kremlin sources. That's what Steele said. That's what Mueller said. That's what the Democrats say. That's what the FBI says. They've known this since at least 2017. I was writing about the dossier in October 2017. I'm just some fat guy in a chair. I don't have more access than the media people, the Democrat politicians, or the intel community. So they were knowingly spreading Russian information. The question was whether it was disinformation or not. We now know it was disinformation. But they knew it came from Kremlin officials. But for 3 years, and many still to this day, they shamelessly spread without proof Russian disinformation that caused the greatest amount of division in this country. Who did that? Almost all these mainstream media people. The FBI that even broke protocol to be able to spy on Trump-connected people to do it. Democratic politicians, you see people like Swalwell and Schiff that swore up and down they'd personally seen evidence that Trump and people connected to him and illegally conspired with these Russians to confirm the allegations in the dossier. We still see media and people and politicians today saying the dossier was true. Still today saying it. Still today, huge amount of Americans think that Trump colluded with Russia in the 2016 election. And it's all lies. It was all Kremlin-sourced lies. Undoubtedly, the biggest cause of division that came from Kremlin sources, undoubtedly it was disinformation and a lie. So now we today, just like I started off this segment saying, now we have to listen to our moral superiors in the deep state. The mainstream media people, the intel agency people, the Democratic politicians that run the Democratic Party. We have to listen to them say, don't you dare investigate corruption that benefited us or that we took part in, because that's spreading Putin's talking points. The same people that, Vladimir Putin couldn't have asked for better allies. If his goal, as we're told by the left or by the deep state, if his goal was to cause division in this country, clearly his greatest allies have been the media, have been the FBI that used Kremlin-sourced information and broke protocol to spy on Trump's campaign, have been Democratic politicians like Schiff and Swalwell and the rest of them. Half of people polled think that Trump's a Russian stooge. He conspired with the Russians. He's basically committing treason. After the actual evidence said the opposite. What I said on Twitter, and I'll get to this, I'll show some of my Twitter feed of an argument I was having with some people. This would be like, hey, what's up, Duke of Jive? Thanks for those of you who don't know, Duke of Jive is a racist that follows me. For example, he said in my video where I'm upset about the FBI that we could always count on fat, angry white guys. So thank you for being here, Duke of Jive. It's always nice to even welcome some racists on that disagree with me. Hopefully, you'll change your opinions on some of your racist manners. So thanks for being here. That's what we're told. People still believe this. So let's look at exactly. It's still plausible that Trump's a Russian agent. Sure, I guess it's still plausible he's an alien as well. After 3 years of investigations, both the IG and the Mueller report showed that the claims in the Steele dossier were garbage. Yeah, you're a racist. I can bring up the comment if you want, Duke of Jive. No problem here. I'll bring it up real quick for you. Brief sidetrack just because we have audience participation here. One of the things I really like is when, again, we're talking of people being exactly what they accuse other of. Duke of Jive's someone who is quick to jump on like a racial bandwagon and call things racist, yet he'll now deny that he came in and said what he said in my thread. I'll bring it up so you can see for yourself. Let's see. But feigning ignorance is a good tactic. So I don't blame you, Duke of Jive. We'll bring it up here. I didn't call you a communist. I don't know. And even despite the fact that I don't know if you're a communist or not, despite the fact that I might disagree with you, I'm glad that you're here, and I'll still have an honest conversation with you. Here we go. Let's see. Sorry it took me a little time to find this, but it's important to hold people account to kind of their claims. Here we go. Let's see if we can find you, Duke, huh? There we go. Angry, fat, white Americans are always good for a laugh. Keep up the good work, LOL. Under Obama, the world forgot how stupid you guys are. Thanks for the reminder. Keep living in my angry bubble. The world is laughing at all that winning. LOL. Thanks, Duke. What my race have to do with anything again? It wasn't just that you called me fat, which I'm fat, I readily admit it. Angry, fat, white man. What's my skin color have anything to do with it? But I've wasted enough time on you. Thanks, though. Thank you for being here. If you'd ever like to have a real conversation, you're welcome to come on my channel anytime. You don't have to show your face. We don't have to do it live. I'll be polite to you, because I'm not about making racial insults and talking about the color of your skin. Where was the racism? What was bringing up my skin color or my race have anything to do with it? You're the one who did it, called me an angry, fat, white guy. Anyways, we're done wasting time on that. So, I want to show you, though. I'll just bring the crib notes. But here's a Rolling Stone article. And this Rolling Stone article is an interview with Chuck Todd. Now, Chuck Todd's kind of the flagship guy. He's supposed to be like the serious, straight newsman on MSNBC. Oh, my computer freezing up here. That's kind of his goal. Whenever my computer unfreezes, I'll show you more of that. But let's go here. So here's the crib notes. And I'll just read some of it. Oop. Mainstream media is ridiculous when it comes to Trump, which is why it's rich with MSNBC and NBC Meet the Press. Host Chuck Todd gave an interview to Rolling Stone in a special to combat fake news. Here's some of Chuck Todd's quotes, and then we'll talk about them. For the last 2 or 3 years, we've been pondering a social media special like this. Last year, we focused on climate change. But had we not done climate change, we were in the social media world thinking about what it was doing to the politics. And then you realize it's the misinformation. This is bigger than social media. And the Ukraine story for me really crystallized it. And for good or bad, our show has been at the forefront of this. The first Sunday of the Trump administration is when we got the phrase alternative facts. It was on Meet the Press that Rudy Giuliani used the phrase, truth is the truth. So look, whether we liked it or not, our platform has been used, or they've attempted to use our platform to essentially disseminate or to sort of what I would say laid the groundwork for all this. Look, I'll just be honest. When I had the third senator to spread disinformation, Senator Ted Cruz, come on my show and do this, who I did not expect to do this, I started to think he wants the confrontation. He wants to use this for some appeasement. I didn't know what else to think. I was stunned because he's a Russia hawk. He spent the entire week showcasing his hawkishness on Russia, threatening the administration. So the reason and I'm sorry I ever showed an expression, the reason the expression on my face went viral is I was shocked. And by the way, they came to us. They came to us saying they wanted to come on this week. And I naively thought, maybe he wants to remind people that with Russia and blaming Ukraine, this is getting ridiculous. And it turned out not to be the case. That's Chuck Todd. Now, what's he saying is the propaganda of Ukraine, the fact that Ukraine interfered in the 2016 election. Now, we know they did. We know that Ukraine, it's publicly admitted. They've admitted as much. Real quick, Duke of Jive. Again, just look at someone who's kind of a leftist that makes racial attacks and has to lump people in like group. Look at how they accuse others of what they're doing. Duke of Jive says in the comments, why can't you stop putting everyone that dislikes Trump in the same boat? This is the person whose comment to me being upset about the FBI abuses is, oh, look, an angry fat white guy. Someone who themselves wants to label people and then, how dare you label me? Always the perpetual victim. It's cool, Duke. We're here for you, man. I do really appreciate you coming and watching the video, though. So anyways, back to Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd's like, oh, he's high and mighty, and he wants to talk to the Rolling Stone about the spread of disinformation. And this went viral. This was all over Twitter. A bunch of media people were talking about it. Many of the people on the left in the media were criticizing Chuck Todd for being naive and giving a platform to disinformation. So they all agree that it's all disinformation, any talk of Ukrainian interference, any talk of wanting to look into Hunter Biden or Joe Biden and that sort of corruption. That's all disinformation. They agree with that. They just disagree on whether they should bring those people on and call them disinformation to their face, or whether they should just call them disinformation with never allowing those people on their platform in the first place. No, Duke of Jive, I never said any stereotype people based on their skin color and how they believe. I frequently make the exact opposite argument, that I treat people based on the content of their character. I don't believe, for example, that someone's politics or their liking of politicians dictated based on their skin color. That's you. Thanks, John R. So they agree that it's disinformation, but here again we see Chuck Todd, he knows that he was wrong about all sorts of things. Like, for example, Chuck Todd and MSNBC were adamant that there would have been no abuses whatsoever by the FBI. That Devin Nunes was totally wrong when he released his memo saying there was FISA abuses. And they backed Adam Schiff's memo saying, no, that Nunes is a liar. They said they spread the Steele dossier accusations. They covered nonstop, including Rachel Maddow, conspiracy theorist in chief, nonstop the idea that Trump was somehow a Russian stooge and things like that. That's Chuck Todd and his network. That's what they did. So instead of saying, wow, we're sorry, we peddled Russia propaganda for 3 years that caused huge divisions in this country, that actually led to the FBI breaking protocol 17 times, including manufacturing evidence to say the opposite of what it actually said, to spy on a presidential campaign. We're sorry in our part in it. Instead, they smugly sit high in their ivory tower and say, well, it's the other side pushing disinformation. What I liken this to, I don't know if I said this already, but I liken it to, it'd be like a bunch of people at a KKK rally sitting around lamenting how racist other groups are. It's pure nonsense. No one spread more disinformation, particularly from Kremlin sources that have caused division in this country. No one has done that more than MSNBC and people in the mainstream media like Chuck Todd. No one. Yet here he is in the Rolling Stone smugly giving an interview. How can we combat disinformation? I knew when I heard these claims about the Ukraine it was disinformation. Now, I've talked the specifics of the Ukraine situation over and over again. Chuck Todd, nor Rachel Maddow, nor Jake Tapper, nor Anderson Cooper, nor anyone in the mainstream media, and the establishment, deep state, intel, propaganda, mainstream media, not one of them have talked the specifics of exactly what's going on with Ukrainian election interference. I've done video after video showing you the Financial Times article, August 2016, 2 months before the election, where a Ukrainian parliamentarian named Lyshenko admitted that he was interfering in the election by releasing classified evidence of an ongoing investigation into Paul Manafort from a black ledger, releasing that into the U.S. media because he didn't like Donald Trump, and so he was interfering to help Hillary. He said he was doing so with the help of their premier anti-corruption investigation agency, which is the NABU. And he said that most Ukrainian politicians were on his side doing the same. That's admitted. He admitted to interfering in the election. Not to mention the information that he released in the Black Ledger wasn't even credible enough for Mueller to use to indict Manafort for crimes. He didn't even use that evidence. So it turns out we can't even verify the evidence that was released by Lyshenko was legitimate. So unverified information leaked illegally because they were found guilty, Lyshenko and another guy, Artem Sitnik, which I'll get to in a second. They were found guilty of interfering in the U.S. election by Ukrainian court, though it was overturned on a technicality. But their court actually tried them for interfering in the 2016 election. Lyshenko publicly admitted it. Now, I know the Democrat defense, one of their defenses is, but Manafort was corrupt, so it's okay. I don't remember you making those arguments with the WikiLeaks documents. All the WikiLeaks documents showed truth. No one said, as long as the WikiLeaks articles were accurate, then it was okay. No one said that. So one, we have no proof that the things Lyshenko released were accurate. And second, even if they were, it's still admitted election interference. That's admitted. This wasn't in InfoWars or Alex Jones. It wasn't on Hannity or Rush Limbaugh even. It was Financial Times, a regular mainstream media outlet. Politico then does an article in 2017, also quoting Lyshenko, again a left-leaning outlet, admitting to Ukrainian election interference. Yet Chuck Todd and all of the media people responding to it are smugly like, oh, this is all clearly disinformation. How is that disinformation? They interfered. Chuck Todd and the media and the intel people and the Democratic politicians told us for 3 years that the most important thing we could do was get to the bottom of foreign election interference. All election interference. In fact, even trolls that we now know there's no proof were actually connected to the Russian government. They just happened to be Russians. People posting on Pokemon Go and Facebook, even their interference was so, any amount of foreign interference was so severe, even they had to be prosecuted and celebrated that all these crimes were found. It was such a big deal. Mueller and the FBI, look at how many people they indicted. Oh, we were attacked so severely. These Russian trolls, it was so severe. That met the threshold for being a severe attack that warranted an investigation. Okay, so how about instead of just some trolls, we have a parliamentarian from a country admitting to interfering in the election, which actually had consequence, unlike those trolls, that forced the ousting of Manafort as campaign manager. Publicly admitted 2 months before the election. Financial Times, August 2016. Yet all the people in the mainstream media, the Democratic Party, the intel agencies that feigned outrage over foreign election interference, they didn't have a word to say about this admitted election interference by Ukrainian officials. Now, who was the person at the NABU that Lyshenko worked for? Artem Sitnik. Sitnik was the one who was tried and found guilty by Ukrainian court of interfering in the 2016 election. The United States election. There is audio, which I played on this show, which you could Google from Glenn Beck. Audio of Artem Sitnik admitting to friends, yes, I interfered in the election to help Hillary Clinton. Admitting it. And these are called conspiracy theories by people like Chuck Todd. It's called disinformation. Their own words. These propagandists in the mainstream media are so bad that they want you to believe it's straight out of George Orwell, 1984. War is peace. The truth is a lie. They want you to believe that when officials in Ukraine publicly acknowledge for you to hear, yes, we interfered in the election to help Hillary Clinton, they want you to believe that's a lie. That's disinformation. If you believe their own words, that's disinformation. Just like they want you to believe when Joe Biden said, I issued a quid pro quo. I told them they weren't going to get this money unless they fired the prosecutor, Shokin. They want you to believe, no, that wasn't the truth. It's always, you can't believe people's public admissions. You can't believe it. You're a conspiracy theory if you take them at face value. That's just on the Ukrainian election interference. That's not even to speak of DNC operative Alexandra Chalupa, who publicly admitted going to Ukrainian embassy looking for dirt on Trump, a DNC official. Politico, their article said she had connections to Ukrainian officials in the embassy. She was pushing the information in those black ledger that we know were released by Lyshenko and Artem Sitnik. That's the exact crime that we have to investigate Trump and his team for 3 years for. Now, I said all along, I don't think it's a crime. I really don't care if Alexandra Chalupa tried to get dirt on Trump from the Ukraine. I don't care. It's sordid, it's shady, but I don't care. I don't care if Trump, Don Jr., tried to get dirt on Hillary at Trump Tower. I don't care about that. But the establishment does, the deep state does, the media does, the intel community does, the Democratic politicians do. They demanded 3 years of investigation into Trump's team for that. So, where's the reciprocal investigation into the Democrats and into Ukrainian election interference? Oh, they say to even investigate their corruption is spreading Putin's talking points. Okay, I'll check the comments here real quick. Duke of Jive, why are only Trump people going to jail? It's because of a deep state establishment. That's why. Because the people that are running the show are seeking to criminalize looking into their own corruption. Now, you're right, though, Duke of Jive. No one to blame but Trump and his team if they allow people to get off the hook, like those that committed the FISA abuses and other things like that. So I will agree with you there. We'll see what Durham says. We'll see what that investigation says. And I never, like, this idea, I said the Clintons are too stupid to beat Trump. But they're too powerful to go to jail. One, power and stupidity aren't mutually exclusive. Second, this is the exact same type of argument that's made about Trump. On one hand, he's a buffoon that can't do anything. But on the other hand, he's been working with the Kremlin since his time on The Apprentice to take over the country on the behalf of Vladimir Putin. I think it's funny that we get mocked and people will say, oh, there's no such thing as a deep state. Oh, it's all stupid. And then when we see evidence of this corruption, people then default back to the counter position, which is, oh, well, surely people would be arrested if all this was true. As if you didn't hear the original claim in the first place, that there is corruption at the highest levels. Do we need to take the law in the country back? Yeah, but not with like a violence or anything like that. We need to start voting in people that aren't part of this corruption on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat. Period. Make no mistake about it. We see that there are establishment people in the Republican Party that are just as bad. Your Rubios, your McCains, etc. Anyways, back to Chuck Todd. Sorry to sidetrack there, but I do try to include audience participation. And by the way, Duke of Jive, I know I'm giving you a hard time, and I did think that your comment about me being an angry fat white guy was racial and stupid. But I really do appreciate people with differing opinions being on here. I think that your comments here have been constructive, so no problems there. So thanks for joining me, and the rest of us. Anyway, so that's where we're at with Chuck Todd. Someone who did more to spread Russia propaganda. His network did more than any other network to cause division, to achieve Putin's goals by spreading Kremlin-sourced propaganda, disinformation. Now lecturing you on, oh, you want to believe this Ukrainian stuff. That's not even, and I'll get later in the video, depending on how long I want to go today. We'll go back. That's just Ukrainian interference. We're not even talking about Biden firing a prosecutor that was looking into his son's company, the lies that went on with that. We're not even talking about that. And the corruption that went on there. Just Ukrainian election interference. Now, where do I want to go from here? Okay. So let me show you how this influences people. So I enjoy following people on Twitter that are left-wing people, particularly as well as right. I try to follow people from different areas because you don't want to get in a bubble where you're only reading stuff that kind of you agree with. So I follow a lot of people on the left, particularly those like Michael Tracy, Jimmy Dore, Aaron Mattei, Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi. These are all people on the left that despise Donald Trump and want to see him removed from office. Some of the reasons are legitimate for disliking Trump. Most of them I disagree with, obviously. But they all agree that kind of this deep state coup and the idea of the Democratic Party and the mainstream media and the intel and community all getting in bed to basically be propagandists and do all this corruption is a terrible, dangerous thing. So oftentimes I find myself reading and commenting on tweets that occur throughout there. So I want to show you, just to kind of hit it home, of an example of kind of this arrogance of people on the left. Let me just show you an exchange I had on Twitter earlier, last evening and earlier today. So this is Michael Tracy. I'll go to the top of the thread. Jay Rosen, and he's talking about to his claims about this Chuck Todd. Rosen's claim about the Chuck Todd interview was basically, oh, don't just say you're naive. You gave these people a platform to spread disinformation. All of the right and people like Cruz, they're all disinformation. So he says, most common replies, this surprises you, nothing new, started with Bush, blah, blah, blah. Michael Tracy, who I like, says, my reply is, why doesn't the disinformation campaign, which resulted in the U.S. media and political ecosystem being engulfed by the belief that Russia installs and controls the president, factor into your analysis? Who is responsible for propagating this disinformation? Excellent point by Michael Tracy. Excellent. He's saying, look, if you're going to be a media watchdog person, particularly someone who's in the media and taking on that role, why do you ignore the fact that the media, controlled and put forth this propaganda that was untrue? And so now you'll see my responses. I put, watching members of the mainstream media who spent 3 years spreading the collusion hoax smugly accuse others of spreading disinformation is like watching Klan members accuse others of being racist. Now, here's a person, I'm not going to go on, but they call themselves on their, you can see, a proud graduate degreed member of the liberal elite, the hashtag resistance. Backbencher Bernie, support secession so the blue states can keep our money. But here's a self-proclaimed liberal elite. He's got a graduate degree, so do I. It means nothing. I can't tell you people I know that barely graduated high school that are smarter than me in most areas of life. So just because you have a graduate degree means nothing. I did a video on that the other day. But let's see what this person says. Yes, all these career military people, civil servants, professors, journalists, etc., spent decades building their reputations so they could create a conspiracy theory about a guy who happened to lie about hundreds of contacts with Russia, a country that holds most of his loans. How is any of that responsive to what me or Michael Tracy were saying? The idea that we know that it was a lie. We know that this was propaganda put forth by the mainstream media. He says it must be true. All of these people have successful careers and they all agree. Therefore, it must be true. And this is something I argue about over and over again, which is this kind of fallacy of appeal to authority. Or appeal, I forget what the technical fallacy is called, but basically appealing to the mob. Appealing to the fact that a bunch of people agree with something, therefore it must be true. Or they're all in high positions of power, so it must be true. And that's nonsense. So I respond, oh, then you must be right. No way all of those people could be wrong. So no doubt you'll point me in the Mueller report or the IG report where anyone connected to Trump whatsoever illegally conspired with Russia to steal the election as they claimed. Oh, wait. And this is what you're dealing with these people. They just keep appealing back to this idea of everyone says it, so it must be true. Everyone says it, so it must be true. I had this argument over and over with people when the Mueller report came out. They kept saying, oh, the Mueller report was damning. Here's an article from Chuck Todd that says it. Here's an article from Rachel Maddow that says it. I'm like, okay, well, you have access to the Mueller report. Show me the section you're talking about. Show me the section that shows that they just kept saying, well, Rachel Maddow says the Mueller report proves Trump colluded with Russians. Show me. Where in the report? Well, Chuck Todd agrees with Rachel Maddow. Okay, but the report's in front of you. Why do I have to listen to Rachel Maddow? Show me where it's at. And you'll see, this person's incapable of doing it. They do exactly what I've always said they'll do. They just say, well, here's another person in the mainstream media, or here's another official person that says, show me the report. We have the report in front of us. Show me in the report. Because I can show you in the report where Mueller specifically says, no, not Trump, nor anyone connected to his team, nor any American illegally conspired with Russians in 2016. He'll want to conflate things like, and this is what the media does, and so it's no doubt where he gets this idea from, but he'll conflate things such as, oh, but people connected in Trump's team talk to Russians. Yeah, that's not illegal. Oh, but they were dishonest about talking with the Russians. Well, it depends on how you look at it. Like Jeff Sessions forgot he had dinner where he met a Russian for 2 minutes. Sure, if you're going to say that's dishonest. Meanwhile, we know that the Democrats, for example, not only paid Fusion GPS, a law firm, to hire a foreign spy in Christopher Steele to get dirt from Kremlin officials to spread about Trump, but they lied about it for a year. We know that. Why is it only, oh, if someone lied connected to Trump, that must prove he's guilty of everything that he was accused of? But when we have the Democrats lying for over a year, when we have the FBI lying, when we have Schiff lying, all these people we can prove, no, these same people are like, oh, that's no big deal. That doesn't prove anything. It doesn't get more clear than Mueller specifically says. In fact, there were two parts of the Mueller document, right? A and B. Part A was about Russia collusion. Said definitively, no American illegally conspired with Russia in 2016. Then Part B, this is where all the Democrats got excited. It said it could neither show evidence of a crime that Trump obstructed justice, nor could it exonerate him. Right? That's what they said. Now, we could get into the rigmarole of what that meant, but doesn't that kind of prove that Section A basically exonerated Trump? Because if it didn't exonerate Trump in Section A, wouldn't Mueller have said the same thing? We can't prove that Trump or his team colluded with Russians, but we can't exonerate him. But they didn't say that, did they? They said there's no evidence whatsoever. Yeah, and Mifsud I've talked about a lot, John, but you're absolutely right. That's the crux of the entire thing that proves the corruption of Mueller. So I asked this person, like, okay, cool, show me in the IG report or the Mueller report. How do they respond? How many have pleaded guilty? If Trump did nothing wrong, why did he say he had no contacts with Russia? We learned dozens of people had hundreds of contacts. What's he hiding? Why won't he let people testify? He did. Testify in front of what? Yes, we know that the Democrats want constant testimony where every document that Trump ever had, every conversation that he ever had needs to be released. Meanwhile, to even suggest that we look into Joe Biden, that's a crime. The standard that the Democrats, the intel community, and the media have is absurd. They say Trump should have to be transparent about everything his entire life. His lawyer's office should be raided in the middle of the night. Everyone connected to him should be grilled in front of Congress and should be grilled in front of the FBI. And if he objects to any of that, it proves his guilt. But to even suggest investigating media or the intel people or the Democrats for their corruption, that's Putin's talking points. And that's reason to impeach. Why did he lie? Give me the specific examples. I don't know. Maybe he lied because he knew that if there was ever any evidence of him talking to any Russian, half of America would believe that he was a Russian asset because of the corruption of the mainstream media, the intel community, and the Democratic Party. Why did the Democrats lie about getting Kremlin-sourced info to smear Trump for over a year? Does Brian here, at Brian Detroit 248, is he calling for an investigation into the Democrats based on that? No. He supports them. Hashtag resist. I say strange. Why don't you provide the links to the IG or Mueller report showing Trump or his team illegally colluded with Russia? Almost like those reports show it didn't happen. But I appreciate your commitment to the lies. Then he posts this link. Key findings of the Mueller report. I'll save you the trouble. Here's a bunch of screenshots. It says things like, Trump people talk to Russian people. Okay, that's not a crime. At all. That's how insane the Democrats are now. That's how insane the deep state is now. They want you to believe this is supposedly the party of peace. This is the party that's accusing others of xenophobia and racism. They want you to believe if you've ever talked to a Russian, you must be guilty of some crime. But they'll accuse you of xenophobia and racism and things like that. I just replied, yes, I know. You couldn't link any part of the report showing Trump or anyone in his teams guilty of colluding with Russians. So you link other sites that also don't say that. Show me anywhere and anything you link that says there was illegal collusion with Russians. He says, if you could read all the screenshots and say Trump did nothing wrong, you were fact adverse. I just said you're welcome to come on my channel at any time. Another person saying, if this is a parody account, I welcome your commitment to the bit. They hope the FBI is reading my tweets. Now, why do I bring that up? One, it's fun to point out a self-proclaimed liberal elite. He has a graduate degree. He must know what he's talking about. No facts whatsoever. But I bring this up in context of what Chuck Todd's saying, because there are a lot of people, and I don't even blame this Brian person. He's listening to the media and he believes them. He should, especially if he's going to brag about how smart he is and how elite he is. He might want to do a little independent research on his own, but fair enough. I've been guilty of believing sources that were inaccurate before. But the danger that I wanted to point out is this is how so many people think. They really believe Trump colluded with Russia, despite literally having the evidence over and over again that that's not true. But Chuck Todd and the media, they're so smug. Oh, this disinformation. How dare they accuse Democrats of doing something illegal. That's Russian disinformation. Yeah, and John Jacobs, I've talked about Mifsud before, but for those of you who don't know, this is Mueller, the FBI's version of events. The entire investigation started because there was this academic named Joseph Mifsud who contacted George Papadopoulos, who was a volunteer for the Trump team, who we don't even have evidence ever met Trump, as far as I know. And Joseph Mifsud said, hey, some Russians got some emails on Hillary. Let me put you in contact with them, Papadopoulos. That was the start of the whole thing. Jim Jordan asked Mueller in Mueller's testimony, Mifsud is the guy that started the whole thing? Yeah. Did the FBI interview Mifsud? Yep. Did the FBI say Mifsud lied to him 3 times? Yep. Did the FBI charge other people with lying to them? Yep. So why didn't you all charge Mifsud, who lied 3 times to the FBI and was the Russian asset who started the entire interference campaign? Why didn't you charge him with a crime? And Mueller gets all flustered. We're not here to talk about decisions on why we prosecuted people or not. So I've talked about this at length. That means 2 things. Either 1, the Democrats, the media, the intel community's favorite excuse. Oh, that's just horrible incompetence. That's all. Nothing corrupt here. Just good old-fashioned incompetence by Mueller and his team. Tasked with investigating Russian interference, they had the guy who started it all lying 3 times to the FBI, but they failed to charge him because they were too busy charging Russian trolls posting on Pokemon Go. Or Mifsud was Western intelligence, which means the whole thing was a sham from the get-go. The last thing I'll say about that is, remember, they are locked in. Mueller and the FBI and even the IG and the Democrats and the media are locked in saying the start of Crossfire Hurricane, the start of the investigation into Trump's team was July 31st, 2016, as a result of Alexandra Downer, an Australian diplomat who was being investigated for illegally funneling $50 million out of his country to the Clinton Foundation. Because Alexander Downer called the FBI, or got in touch with people at the FBI and said, I just talked to a Trump associate who said that Russians have emails on Hillary. Right? That's how this all started. That's what they're saying. So if we find out during the Durham investigation that actually looking into Trump's team began before July 31st, 2016, then you'll once more get the media, see the media, the Dems, and the intel community spin and lie. Oh, no, we didn't mean what we said, and it's okay, and it's not a big deal. Just like with there's no way that there were FISA abuses. No way. Well, it wasn't as bad. It's a victory. Right, Bradley, you're exactly right. John, you're right. That's because Mifsud was Western intelligence, and that's what we're going to find out. The IG didn't have the ability to talk to places like MI6 or foreign intel assets, didn't have the ability to talk to the CIA. So we'll find out that's what's going on with Mifsud. But Bradley, you're absolutely right as well. The left are totally, at this point, they're nothing more, the leftist media, they're nothing more. Let me take that back. Someone criticized me earlier today, and it is worth pointing out. It's not leftist media, necessarily. It's the establishment media, who happens to be overwhelmingly for the establishment Democratic Party. But that's a more accurate way of saying it. They are nothing more than propaganda pieces for the Democratic Party and for the intel community, and all of the corruption that comes with them. So at this point, if they had to admit, oh, we're sorry, we were wrong about the whole thing, any little bit of credibility they have left would be totally gone. Hey, what's up, Michelle? Thanks for being here. Yeah, John, and that's why I've said, again, I like to toot my own horn. October 26, 2017, I was writing, if the Obama administration's FBI used unverified opposition research to spy on the Trump team, it's the biggest political scandal in the history of the country. And it is. I've been proven true. Only it's even worse than I originally thought, because in the process of doing it, not only was it unverified and opposition research, not only was it central and essential to getting this FISA warrant, but they actually broke protocol and had abuses 17 times, including straight up manufacturing evidence to say the opposite of what it actually said in order to get that. So it's worse than I even thought back then. But the reason I said it was the worst is because the FBI is the most powerful investigative agency in the history of the world. It has the ability to turn your life upside down. Even if you didn't commit a crime, they could spy on you, they could ruin your life, they could force you into bankruptcy, they could throw you in jail for the rest of your life, etc. The tools at their disposal are incredible. We don't even know about many of them. Every conversation you've ever had could be potentially dredged up by them. Everything you say, even in the privacy of your own home, could be listened into by them. Watergate, we had two bumbling fools in a hotel rifling through papers. Here we have the Democrats using the most powerful investigative agency in the history of the world to spy on their political opponent. So is it any wonder that they're all in on any investigation into the FBI, any investigation into the Obama administration, any pointing out the corruption of the media that defended and cheered on this and were propagandists for them? Oh, that all has to be Russia disinformation. Trump should be impeached for wanting to investigate the Obama administration and the Bidens quid pro quo. That's literally where we're at. That's why they're fighting tooth and nail. That's why they waited until the IG, they specifically timed impeachment with the release of the IG report. Because they spent so long, so confidently telling you, you're a crazy tinfoil hat wearer, you're a liar, Nunez is a liar. Anyone who even wants, not only did the FBI do nothing wrong, anyone who even wants to look into them is hurting America. That's what they said. That's what the media told you. I was doing videos and writing about this 2-3 years ago. That's what the media was telling you. So now that they've been proven completely wrong, they can't admit it. What are you going to admit? Sorry, we were propagandists for corruption. The biggest corruption scandal in the history of the country. We endorsed it. Not only did we endorse it, we attacked you if you sought to look into it. And we gave ourselves awards for spreading Russian disinformation while we were doing it. The same people that Chuck Todd, the Republicans like Ted Cruz, or people in the media like whether it be Hannity or Tucker Carlson, or I'm sure Chuck Todd doesn't know me, and he's not talking about me, but people like me, independent creators online, that he's calling disinformation agents for talking about Ukraine and election interference and things like that. We're the same people that were right about everything he was wrong about. We were right about the FISA abuse. We were right about the Steele dossier being garbage. He was wrong. He spread Russian disinformation, as did the rest of the mainstream media, almost the entirety of them. And so despite being wrong, he's now saying, not only was I not wrong, I was right, but they're spreading disinformation. So that's what was going on. Now, I want to show you another example. One of the things I'm trying to do, I don't know what I'm going to call this segment. I'm going to try to get segments and graphics and stuff. I'm trying. Support me on Patreon, PayPal, or like and subscribe would help me as well. But I really am trying to, I've had a couple people support me. I am trying to put that money back into the show. Editing software, things like that, trying to get better at this stuff. But I'm going to try to break it up into segments so it's easier to consume. This segment, and one of the things I'm trying to do is, I like going back to stuff I've written a long time ago, 6 months or longer ago, and talking about how those stories are relevant to today. So today we're talking about how the media is corrupt and they accuse other people of spreading disinformation when in reality it's them exactly that do that. And so I thought now would be a good time to go back, way back when, to January 8th of 2019, and talk about how the media formed this narrative that Trump said Nazis are good people. Now, in reality, I was writing about this when Charlottesville happened, contemporaneously. I remember when it happened because I was on a trip. I don't get to go on many trips. I was at a casino with my wife and some friends, and I remember coming back. I was like, I wonder what I missed, and the whole Charlottesville debacle happened. I was like, whew, yeah, I missed a lot. So I remember frantically researching, watching videos, reading interviews from Trump to see exactly what was going on because I knew the media was lying, and I was right. So it's relevant today. The reason we talk about this today, I summarized it in January 8th, 2019, because it's, again, the reason I do this segment is because oftentimes we forget The news cycle's so fast that we forget these damning stories of corruption that we see, that shows how corrupt the media is, how corrupt the intel community is, how corrupt the establishment and the deep state is. It's so fast, the corruption's occurring so fast and being outed so fast under Trump that we forget blatant examples we see. So I'm going to try to do this at least once a week. So, without further ado, this is from the website Above Top Secret. I'm a member. My name's Grambler there. As always, I'll try to keep other posters' information off here. So let's go back to January 8th, 2019 and start reading what I wrote. The institutions of cultural power in this country are largely controlled by the left wing. By this I mean all the institutions that have power to influence people's thoughts on issues. Mainstream media, academia, Silicon Valley, and social media companies, the entertainment industry, athletes, etc. By the way, you hear me say this all the time. Every video you'll hear me talk about that. You don't hear many people talk about it. I'm one of the only ones. Why? Because I understand controlling the narrative is of huge importance. We could win political seat after political seat against these corrupt people, but as long as they control the narrative and the cultural institutions that control that narrative, they're still going to be incredibly powerful. Moving on. The powerful collective is able to shape political discourse and history in certain ways, and often do. This is what happened with the narrative that Trump had said some Nazis are good people. Trump never said that, and yet is repeated by pundits on TV, celebrities, and even on this website, ATS, quite frequently. This is then used to smear him and his followers as racist, as a reason to reject their ideas or not listen to them. Despite this being the narrative many believe, few know the actual events surrounding Trump's speeches after the horrendous Charlottesville attack. So I wanted to go through the actual speeches and see what was said by Trump. Now to start with, Trump's statement where he said there were good people on both sides was actually his third public discussion after the protest. Here's exactly what he said that people claim mean he somehow said Nazis are good people. Here's his quote. Excuse me. They didn't put themselves, and you know you had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. That's it. That's what Trump said. That's the claim that he said Nazis were good people. Now, if you go, what I'll do is I'll link, because I'm not going to link all of these articles, so I'll link my thread here, and I have links to all of the articles that I'll talk about in that thread. So feel free to double check me to make sure I'm not pulling your leg. But all these are direct quotes from Trump's speeches when I'm quoting him. So moving on. The narrative is that everyone on the side of those wanting the statue to stay up were Nazis or white supremacists. Therefore, this statement shows Trump says Nazis can be fine people. So let's dig further. Let's start with Trump's first speech after the horrible murder of Heather Heyer. I will link to all the speeches, but will not quote them in their entirety because they were long speeches. Here's the relevant part. This is Trump. First statement he gives after Charlottesville. This is what he says. But we're closely following the terrible events unfolding in Charlottesville. We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. This has been going on for a long, long time. It has no place in America. This is me again. The media immediately began to go into overdrive. How dare Trump say violence is on all sides? Only the white supremacists were to blame. The other side were good people who were attacked. And so article after article came out about how Trump was giving cover to white supremacists. This despite the fact Trump called out the violence and hatred and bigotry. Blatantly said so. There's a video at the bottom of the Vox article that shows this. Now, compare this to how the media treated Democratic statements after one of their own shut up a ball field containing Republicans that nearly killed Steve Scalise. Bernie, Pelosi, etc. issued statements that condemned all violence. This despite the fact that the incident of violence was done by only left-leaning people. This is particularly troubling for Bernie, who called out Republicans after the shooting of Gifford for only condemning all violence instead of just right-wing violence. So let's take Bernie. What's her name? I always get the Giffords mixed up. Gabby Gifford, I think, was shot. Bernie fundraised off of it. He said, is it even safe to not be conservative in these districts anymore? He said out in a fundraiser. He said Republicans needed to call out how their rhetoric was causing this violence. Then one of his supporters shoot up a Republican ball field. Did Bernie come out and say, I need to take credit for how me and left-wing rhetoric caused this violence. No! Instead, he condemned all violence. Then back to Charlottesville. We got this not two sides clashing, doing terrible things, both sides, and then one not goes further than anyone else and kills this girl. Does Bernie condemn all violence? No! He calls out Trump for condemning all violence and says, you have to just condemn right-wing violence. The other side was noble and great. Do you see that? Anytime someone associated with the right or can be associated with the right does violence, then it is incumbent on everyone in the right to just call out right-wing violence. But when one of his supporters shoots up people, then how dare you say he should only condemn left-wing violence? You condemn all violence. And this is exactly how almost all the Democrats, such as Pelosi, did. Pelosi was livid when she was asked specifically after the Scalise shooting. Do you think that your rhetoric, or you need to condemn left-wing rhetoric? How dare you? She couldn't believe someone would dare ask her that. That's exactly what they did with Trump, though. The exact same thing. Trump said, we condemn this act of violence, of bigotry, of hatred. It's been going on all sides for far too long in this country. And somehow they turn that into, oh, he's supporting white supremacy. Me continuing. So did the media hammer the Dems for not calling out radical left-wing violence by name? Nope. Yet here that's what we see. And unlike the Scalise shooting, where clearly there was only one side acting violently, in the Charlottesville situation, both sides did in fact commit violence. Both sides had many people show up armed for combat and attacking the other side. Now you may say the Antifa types were more noble because white supremacists are the worst. Which I agree, white supremacists are terrible, I hate them. But nonetheless, they also were violent thugs. And yet the media celebrated them as heroes. Ironically, the media gave cover to groups that would later go on to commit violence against innocent people, the very thing they accused Trump of. We see incident after incident of Antifa committing violence. And this is when when Antifa first got on the map for Democrats. All the media people were celebrating them. They were nobly there fighting these white supremacists. Never mind they showed up with weapons. Never mind they attacked people that weren't attacking them back. Video after video, you could see that. Both sides had people attacking people. Both. Both were corrupt, violent thugs. But the media held them as heroes. Then they kept defending Antifa because they were all in, just like we were talking about earlier. Once they defend the violence once, then when the violence happens again, and it's just Antifa beating people, they're like, well, what Jake Tapper say. It's in the name. They're anti-fascist. Violence is bad, but some violence is more justified than others. Is it okay to punch a Nazi? You remember all this crap? This is where it started. So here's the media. Trump's doing the right thing. He's calling out violence on all sides, trying to calm the situation down and de-escalate it. The media and the Dems are glorifying violence on one side. Then predictably, when more violence occurs from that group, they have to then defend it and say, oh, well, that violence is okay. Moving on. So Trump, seeing the violence from the left was being ignored or celebrated, took the time to condemn all the violence. Now, you may disagree, but it's hardly him calling out racist. Or hardly him not calling out racist. In fact, we see the perils of saying some violence is more justified than others. People then attack innocents with moral righteousness as they feel their violence against non-violent people is okay as long as they have the correct ideology. Needless to say, after being beat up in the media for a manufactured scandal that his statement gave cover to Nazis, Trump then gives another speech. This is speech 2 Trump gives after the Charlottesville. Quote from Donald Trump. As I said on Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America. And as I've said many times before, no matter the color of our skin, we all live under the same laws. We all salute the same great flag. And we're all made by the same almighty God. We must love each other, show affection for each other, and unite again the condemnation of hatred, bigotry, and violence. We must rediscover the bonds of love and loyalty that bring us together as Americans. Racism is evil. And those who cause violence in its names are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. Now, this is just a few days after Charlottesville. The first was like the day after the first comments I read, where he condemns all hatred and violence. Right? This, he specifically calls out the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists. He says they're to be condemned. He makes overtures to all of us, no matter what race we are. We need to come together. Despite all of this, it wasn't enough. The media continued to push nonstop that Trump was covering for racists, even when he named them. It took too long. He didn't out them by name in his first speech, they said. And of course, because some of these racists may have voted for Trump or liked some of his policies, that must mean Trump's racist as well. This sort of guilt by association is not only a terrible thing to do, it's also selectively applied, which proves its use exclusively for political calculations. Consider the case of Louis Farrakhan, noted Jew hater, who a week before the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting likened Jews to termites. Now, Obama and many other Democrats, including men in the Congressional Black Caucus, have not only been at events with Farrakhan, but had photos taken with him. Yet was Obama or the rest asked repeatedly to condemn Farrakhan? Were they smeared as racist for palling around with Farrakhan? Yet when David Duke, who hasn't had photos taken with Trump or anything like that, when he says he liked some of Trump's policies, Trump's told again and again and again he must be racist and he has to condemn him over and over and over again. Imagine Trump having pictures with David Duke like Obama did with Louis Farrakhan. But nope, selectively applied as always. And so despite calling out bigotry and hatred for a second speech, and this time calling out the hate groups by name, the media still blasted Trump. So then we come to the third speech. It actually wasn't a speech at all, but a press conference about Trump's infrastructure plan. The media, however, had their narrative designed to take down Trump, which is really what almost all the mainstream media is about. They're just propagandists trying to take down Trump, because Trump's rocking the boat. He's potentially against the establishment and the deep state. He might investigate their crimes. So by any means necessary, they have to take him down. Even if that means claiming he didn't call out these racist groups, which he clearly did. They wanted to talk about Charlottesville. Let's see some of the fair questions. Again, this was a press conference about Trump's infrastructure plan. Let's see some of the questions the media asked him. Why did you wait so long to blast neo-Nazis? Why do Nazis like you? Was David Duke there? You're not putting these protesters in the same levels as neo-Nazis, are you? Is the alt-left as bad as white supremacy? And so while being badgered like this and going off the cuff, Trump says his statements about how both sides have fine people that I put at the top. Now here is the rest of the exchange that the media doesn't include for you when they just say, oh, Trump said Nazis were good people. Here's what Trump goes on to say. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history. You're changing culture. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had fine people. But you also had troublemakers. And you see them come with black outfits, with helmets, and with baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group. Trump says he feels there were good people on that side protesting against the statue being removed, but he specifically says he's not talking about the KKK and white nationalists and neo-Nazis. Despite this, we are told when he said there were fine people in that group, he's talking about white nationalists and neo-Nazis, even though he specifically says, not them. So there's only one way for the media narrative to work, to prove that every single person that was at that rally was a neo-Nazi or a white supremacist. And even then there are two problems. One, it doesn't prove Trump was saying Nazis were fine people. Only, even if they're right that they were all white supremacists or Nazis, when he specifically says, I don't like Nazis and white supremacists, they're bad, but I think there were good people on that side, it doesn't prove he secretly likes Nazis. It proves that he erroneously thought some of them weren't Nazis, if that's the case. And the second is, there were people on that side that weren't neo-Nazis and white supremacists. There were groups trying to keep the peace there, like the Oath Keepers. There were people from the ACLU. All sorts. There were preachers. There were First Amendment rights activists. All of these people were on the side against Antifa, trying to stop the violence. Here's one woman's accounting of it. Michelle Piercy, who travels to Charlottesville to participate as a neutral peacekeeper for American Warrior Revolution, a group that stands up for free speech rights and acts as a buffer between competing voices, knew there was going to be violence, but went anyways. Her quote, "We were made aware the situation could be dangerous and we were prepared. The Wichita night worker for a Kansas retirement home said that the situation was completely disorganized. The police were responsible for hurting white supremacists on the street where Antifa and BLM were located. All chaos broke out. I witnessed police officers say, "That's not our problem, and you shouldn't have come," and refused to help the injured. Piercy says she does not support any white supremacy, Nazism, or alt-right causes, nor does she believe the president has that in his heart. My partner is a black man who traveled to Charlottesville for the same reason I did, to protect free speech. We're in groups, and he's a very good man. What we're trying to do is talk to Antifa and Black Lives Matter and let them know that the way they're protesting is the wrong way to go about it. Blaming the police is one thing, but criticizing President Trump's handling of the violence that led to the deaths of 3 people is another. Piercy says, "I believe President Trump is doing what he can. Good people could go to Charlottesville," said Piercy, who drove all night with other people, she said, "also love and defend free speech, who are the furthest thing from bigots, Nazis, or white supremacists." Well, this is back to me. Now, I've heard people over and over say, no one who isn't a piece of garbage would have been standing on the side of those white supremacists. Yet here we see a woman who was. Here we see a group that was. Who's dating a black man. Who the black man was defending them. Because there are people that believe in principles such as free speech. And they believe that when you have a permitted right to protest, you should be allowed to protest without being physically attacked. They believe the police should not facilitate those attacks by allowing the crowds to converge like that. Hence, Trump was right. There were good people on both sides. But the media had to malign this woman as a Nazi. They had to malign that group as a Nazi. You have to believe that everyone in that group were Nazis. Or else, Trump specifically saying there were good people, not the white nationalists, not the Nazis. Doesn't make sense. Now look, there's reason to criticize Trump. He had clumsy language. And I don't think Trump watched much of the footage of the protest. I think he just knows the issue of there are good people that don't want Confederate statues taken down. There are good people that do want them taken down. So he probably didn't watch much of the footage. He's probably a busy man, and he just said, yeah, there's good people on both sides. And that's not good. He should have been more informed. But he called the Nazis out at least twice. He called white nationalists out by name at least twice. He condemned all bigotry, all hatred, all racism in all 3 speeches. I guarantee that most people who repeat that Trump said Nazis can be good people line have no idea he gave 3 speeches condemning bigotry, racism, and violence, and specifically said he was not talking about Nazis when he said they were good people. This is because the establishment left and their mainstream media mouthpiece control the narrative. There's been 3 negative consequences. 1, it smeared good people like Miss Piercy who went there to protect free speech as Nazis. 2nd, it allowed Trump and by proxy his supporters to be accused of saying Nazis can be good people. This, along with the "is it okay to punch a Nazi" push, all but justifies violence against Trump and his supporters, which we see constantly. 3rd, it gave cover for groups like Antifa to commit violence against innocent people and smear them as Nazis, which we see constantly. It also gives an example of how these narratives can be very effective at rewriting history and why we should be vigilant in pushing facts. And it shows that the mainstream media aren't journalists, they're just propagandists. And here's my video I did back then in January. There's one other thing I want to... Someone asked me, can you post a link of people saying Trump called Nazis fine people? This took me 5 minutes to come up. USA Today, The Hill, Progressive.org, Chicago Sun-Times, Rollcall.com, Weekly Standard, Miami Herald, NewJersey.com, ForeignPolicy.com, TheAtlantic.com, many more. So what's that trip down memory lane about? The same thing they did with Charlottesville. The same thing is what they're doing with the Ukraine situation. They control the narrative. And when you control the narrative, you can rewrite history. So now to this day, you'll be talking to people and they'll say, oh yeah, Trump, he's a white supremacist. He said Nazis could be good people. No, he didn't. He never said that. But that's part of the public narrative now. People that don't know, it's repeated so many times in their brain. If you're not informed, you just assume that must be true. It's been repeated so many times that the FBI did nothing wrong, that even when the IG report is damning showing their corruption, people don't believe it. It's been reported that Trump and his team illegally conspired with Russians in the 2016 election. Polls show half of Americans believe it. Even though the Democrats own White Knight, Bob Mueller, their hero, they had votive candles. Remember last year around Christmas? They were singing Silent Night, Mueller Night, right? He was their hero. Even he, when he said, nope, Trump's basically exonerated, no Russia collusion, they still believe it. If they just keep repeating everything about Ukraine's been debunked over and over and over again because they control the narrative, that will be the official narrative moving forward. Now look, yes, it is important to fight back politically and vote for people to get this corruption out. And yes, it's important to talk about the corruption in the investigations and things like that, which I do all the time. And the Republicans do okay with some of that stuff, though I think they could do better. But they fail miserably when it comes to allowing the other side, the deep state, to control the narrative. They have been playing the long game. They're indoctrinating your children in elementary schools, all the way up through college. They control all of it. They control all the social media, the tech companies. They control almost all the entertainment industry. They control almost the entirety of the mainstream media. It's really a miracle to think that those of us who aren't in that agenda win anything at all, have our viewpoint put forward for any bit at all. It's amazing. I honestly can't believe the way the deck stacked. That Trump won. Let me read some comments here. Yeah, so John, this is something I said. I think I said it in my last live stream, right? The last time capsule I did was about the Black Hebrew Israelites. This was the group that yelled at the Covington kids. They're racist black people that think they're the true Israelites. They hate white people. They hate Jews. They hate homosexuality, trans people. They're misogynist. They have a history of violence. One of their founders in Florida beheaded someone was accused of, murdered 14 people, called to bring the ears of white people. This group is yelling at the Covington kids, and the New York Times is writing puff pieces about them. The Southern Poverty Law Center saying, well, yes, they're a hate group, but they're not as bad as white supremacists. The New York Times article ends by saying, quoting a professor saying, look, you might think these people are bad, but understand they're not as scary as Trump supporters in MAGA hats. A racist, homophobic organization yelling at children that murders people isn't as bad as people with MAGA hats. That's what the New York Times piece was. Now we just saw, why did I do that Times capsule? Well, that New Jersey murder, where the Jewish deli was shot up and a police officer was killed. 3 people died. Black Hebrew Israelites. There we saw, 8 months prior, the media running puff pieces for them. Now they're out killing people. Now the synagogue shooter, right, in Pittsburgh, which is near where I live, they tried to blame that on Trump, even though the manifesto that shooter wrote talked about how he hated Trump because he was too pro-Jewish. But still they blame that on Trump. Everything's Trump's fault. But when they're specifically sticking up for Antifa or hate groups like the Black Hebrew Israelites, no mea culpa when they go out and harm people. And I'm not saying that should be necessarily. I mean, it's disgusting to write a puff piece for a racist group, and it's disgusting to defend Antifa. But anyways, John, what you said there, you think that the KKK is in conjunction with the FBI. It could be. I don't know. I said that if I was really the KKK, you're so loathed and hated, wouldn't you be out there supporting, like, basically advocating the opposite of what you want? That's one group that's so hated that people's gut reaction is anything they say to believe the opposite of. So if you're the KKK and you really hate Bernie Sanders, why not endorse him? Yeah, we're endorsing Bernie because, you know, we think he has the right stance with Palestine. We don't like the Jewish people. Then all of a sudden people say, oh, the KKK endorses Bernie. That's why this guilt... By the way, I have no love for Bernie. But I would not say, oh, the KKK endorses Bernie. That must prove that he's a racist. That'd be absurd. I'd say, why should Bernie be held accountable because some nutbags like some of his policies? It's irrelevant. We should judge Bernie's policies on their merits, not on how many racists like it. But there's certainly, I do think, I'm skeptical, like when you read at least the FBI hate crime statistics and things like that, domestic terrorism statistics that I've read, I find them dubious. Like, if you read the methodology, they'll include things like white nationalist groups in prison. They include that as right-wing terrorism. But if there's a black gang in prison, they don't include that as left-wing terrorism. And so there's all sorts of funky things like that. And how you define terrorism versus mass shootings versus other things like that. It seems that it's easy to play with the numbers. And I definitely think, I have no trust of the FBI whatsoever. I think that we see incident after incident, for example, with like Islamic terrorism. It turns out many of the people that the FBI actually catch, in fact, like basically the only ones they actually catch, are ones that they set up as patsies in the first place. So they radicalize someone online, and then when that person's radicalized to the point where they're going to carry out an attack, the FBI's like, yeah, we'll help you, because they're pretending to help radicalize them. And then they arrest the people and say, yay, we're the FBI, we're protecting you. When really, when it comes to, like, I don't know, protecting us from actual shooters like the Las Vegas, biggest mass shooting in the history of the country, they have no clue. They're inept when it comes to all sorts of other terror attacks that go on. Remember, according to the left, according to the intel agencies, according to the media, according to the Democrats, they're so incompetent, the FBI is so incompetent, they don't know you're not supposed to make up evidence to say the opposite of what it actually says. They didn't know that they should have went after Joseph Mifsud, the Russian intelligence asset, according to them, who started the entire Russian interference. They didn't know. They didn't know they should have investigated the most successful piece of Russian propaganda, the Kremlin source Steele dossier. They didn't know. They didn't know they should have investigated that. So that same incompetent FBI, who the heck knows what they're capable of? The truth is, yes, there's some incompetence, but it's mostly corruption. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're working with white supremacists, because this is one of the big boogeyman of the left, of the establishment, let me say, the deep state. Used to be, right, you had countries were the boogeyman. Vietnam or the Soviets. The problem is the more interconnected we all get, that makes it more difficult. So now the big boogeyman's climate change. Give up all your rights because of climate change. But another one's white supremacy. Everything's white supremacist. I've told you about my time in the debate community. For those of you who don't know, I was a collegiate debater for 4 years, and then I was a coach and judge in that community. It is the left of the left. So I was there in 2003 to probably like 2009, 2010. Incredible left. If you think, like, we were seeing things in 2004 that you would later then see that were shocking people on Yale or in Harvard, you know, all this social justice stuff. This was 2004 we were seeing it, because it's that far left wing. Everything's white supremacy. Everything. Did you see the article? What was it in? Salon. The Hallmark Channel Christmas movies. White supremacy. I kid you not, if you I should have brought that article up. I kid you not, if you read that article, it actually is like, it's just like Goebbels and Hitler, and the material they put out. The Hallmark Channel. You know, those movies just about... Here's the plot of every Hallmark Channel movie, right? And by the way, I've seen them with people of color, with white people. I've even seen them with relationships with two guys. Here's basically the plot of every Hallmark Channel movie, right? Here we go. There's a main character, man, woman, skin color, doesn't matter, right? And they're interested in their career, and their family wants them to be close to them for Christmas, and then there's usually some kind of romantic interest, and by the end of the movie, the person learns, career's not everything. I need to be close to my family. I need to have a loving relationship. That's it. That's 99% of every Hallmark movie, Christmas movie. That's it. That's white supremacy, according to the left, according to Salon. That's Goebbels and Hitler. Now, when you start to understand how they can make that argument, you see how everything's white supremacy. Right? Everything. Because they need that boogeyman. They don't want people to know the truth. And that is that the idea of white supremacy, right? Who is it? There was someone, I got this from someone, I can't remember, but it's the idea, it's a metaphor of like slaying dragons, right? You had the left, which did fight a noble fight. Well, the left. I don't even want to put a label on it. You had people that fought against slavery. You had people that fought against racism, Jim Crow. You had people that fought in the civil rights movement. Those are all noble causes. What's your cause today? You look at those people and you're like, wow, MLK or Malcolm X or whoever. They're all great people, right? Those are great people. They led this big fight. I want to be involved in that fight. So what's your fight? Hallmark Channel? Racist? Everything's racist. You need to blow up this idea of the racist boogeyman. Meanwhile, Trump supporters are beaten left and right. We constantly see group of people of color mob a white person. Rarely is it considered a hate crime. I guarantee 9 out of 10 times if a group of white people beat a black person, it's charged as a hate crime. That might be hyperbolic. I can't guarantee that. But oftentimes, again, if you watch my channel, and I have to say this because the left controls the narrative, because the deep state and the establishment controls the narrative, I have to say this anytime I speak on the issue. I am incredibly heartbroken for what happens in inner city black communities. I think it is a travesty of our country that we allow that to go on. I think that people that grow up in inner city black communities and somehow work themselves out of it are better people than I will ever be. I think that if I was put in a situation where I wasn't in a two-parent household, where I was around constant violence, where it was hard to get an education because of the violence that was going in the schools and the quality of my school was so poor, where I was struggling to get food in my plate from a parent that maybe didn't work or only had one job, as that kid, I know that I would have failed. I know that I would have given in to a gang or something like that, regardless of skin color. It has nothing to do with the race of it. I know I would have failed. It's just my solution to that problem is the opposite of what the Democrats are proposing. The Democrats say, oh, you're a victim. Oh, it's all about your race. This country's so racist. It's racism keeping you down. Oh, you need a special handout. You're a child. My solution is to say this. There have been despicable things done by our government in this country to people of color. Slavery, that legacy, Jim Crow, that's terrible. However, from this point forward, we need to stop looking at the past. Our government should be looking forward. We will treat everyone the same regardless of your skin color, regardless of your sex, regardless of your sexual preference, as long as it's consenting adults, etc. Yes, every group will be able to say, but I had some sort of historical oppression. Some will have more of a claim to that than others. But it doesn't matter. We'll never be able to fix it, so all we can do moving forward is going on. Stop this war on poverty nonsense that exploded the single-parent crisis in the inner-city community. Stop it. That's my solution. We have to be honest about the numbers. We're told, ban prisons. Prisons are racist. More black people are incarcerated. Look, I've done this spiel before. I don't know if you've heard me talk about this. We're told that we live in a racist society. It's racist. One of the big reasons is law enforcement. And they'll take statistics. They'll say more black men are charged with crimes. Right? More black men are convicted of the crimes. More black men are put in more terrible prison conditions. More black men serve more time for the crime. Right? That's what they say. I say, well, there could be many factors to that. That's not proof of white supremacy. No, it must be. It's white supremacy. So then I say, okay, if that's the game, intersectionality tells us that in cultural Marxism, they all of these oppressed groups band together. So we look at other groups, such as whites are oppressors, people of color are the oppressed. But we also say men are the oppressors, right? And women are oppressed. We say that as well. So more, when we look at those four categories, likelihood to be charged with a crime, likelihood to be convicted, the amount of time you'll serve, and the condition of your prison. When we look at that, the discrepancy between white and black is like 15% more. I'm just pulling the numbers out. But the discrepancy between men being punished more than women in all those categories far exceeds the difference between white and black. So does that mean we live in a sexist feminist society? Because men are punished by the criminal justice system far more harshly than women? That discrepancy more than the black to white discrepancy? No, right out of the gate when you say that, what's the first thing people on the left say without even thinking? They go, well, men do commit more crimes. Oh! Now we can look at the causational factors. The stats alone aren't evidence of prejudice. When it goes against your narrative. So why am I saying all this? What's it show? Look, studies show, and it has to do with the amount of people in this country and all sorts of things, and there's a lot of factors. And I'm not saying it's genetic or anything like that. But the truth of the matter shows that most people commit crimes against their own race. It's just the truth of it. As a white person, you're far more likely to be attacked by a white person, have a crime committed to you, than you are someone of a different race. Same's true of a black person. You're far more likely to be attacked by another black person than someone of a different race. But we're constantly told that there's this problem of that's what Black Lives Matter is all about. They ignore the thousands upon thousands of homicides that are black on black crime, and they focus on the couple of incidents a year they can prove where some white person kills a black person. But the reality shows that actually a white person is 23 to 27, depending on the year, times more likely to have a crime committed against him by a black person, a violent crime, than vice versa. I'm not saying black people are inferior. I'm not saying anything like that. But those are the numbers. Also, if you're white and you hear that and you're like, oh my God, I'm frightened of black people. That's not what I'm saying. Again, you're more likely to be harmed by someone you personally know or by someone who shares the same race as you. The point I'm making in bringing up that statistic is just to show this fear-mongering about white supremacy is a joke. It's more division by the Democrat Party. It's them controlling the narrative, which is kind of the theme for today. They push forth this division and propaganda, and then, when predictably, again, I've talked to you before about this, people like Jared Taylor, and Richard Spencer, these are white nationalists. I don't know if they're white supremacists. I don't know much about them. I don't. I know they're people I wouldn't like. I don't like their policies because they want a country for white people, and I disagree with that. I don't know if that's because they think white people are the best race. I don't know if they advocate violence to do that. I don't know. And I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon just because someone in the media says it, because I know the media could lie. But nonetheless, I don't like their policies. I do know they're self-professed white nationalists. That disgusts me. Period. Now, having said that, one of the things I've seen them, not much have I seen them talk, but I saw via another channel I was watching an interview that one of them were doing, and they said the number one driver to people and their agenda was groups like Black Lives Matter and Black Panthers. And the reverse is also true. The best way to drive people to the Black Panthers or Black Lives Matter type groups are groups like Richard Spencer. The hatred on both sides, for the racists on both sides, they're actually each other's best friends for driving up support. Yeah, you're right, John. You can get a degree in fighting the patriarchy when it comes to sexism or fighting whiteness. I mean, I had it in debate all the time. I was constantly, why haven't I apologized for my whiteness? Over and over I was told that. There certainly are degrees. I try to insert any other group in there. Could you get a major in fighting femininity? The matriarchy? Fighting the matriarchy? Toxic femininity? Fighting blackness? Fighting Hispanic power? You think you can get agendas on any, or degrees on any of that? Of course not. But the Democrat, that's what they want. That's what the establishment wants. They want this cultural Marxism. They want this identity politics to set up this dichotomy of, we disagree with each other on superficial crap, racial differences, gender differences, sexual preference differences. That's right, Bradley. That's exactly what I'm saying right there. Right. It will be our downfall. And stay tuned to the end of the show because I'm going to talk about that. So that's what it's about. I got off on this tangent about this stuff, but it's about controlling the narrative. And this is where the Republicans lose. We have to start fighting back more on this narrative. There are ways to fight, right? You can fight back like Don Jr. on The View, which I highly recommend if you haven't watched, you watch that. They say his dad's a bad guy for saying grab him by the P word. He says, hey, we shouldn't judge people by comments they made like that. That's terrible. Oh, no, yes, we should. He says, okay, Joy Behar, you wore blackface. Whoopi Goldberg, you said Roman Polanski, who anally raped a 13-year-old girl, didn't actually commit rape. He didn't go on there raving and screaming like a lunatic. He was cool, calm. That's basically how I would normally operate. But sometimes I do rave like a lunatic on my own show. I don't really yell at people like that when I'm talking about them. Use your own style, but Defend. Don't just play defense. Go on the offense. They accuse you of being a racist. No, you're the racist. We don't focus on people's race. We don't care about it. You're the one who wants to make everything about race. Over and over again. You say we hate illegal immigrants, or we hate people from other countries. No, you hate them. You want them here for the cheap labor. You don't care that human rights organizations say 2/3 of the women trying to cross the border are sexually assaulted. You don't care at all. You know the chances of them getting in the country are still not the greatest. Yet you encourage them to make the trip because you think it's politically advantageous for you. You don't care about, you say we kids in cages, you don't care about them at all. In fact, every time you post a video of a kid in a cage or a picture of a kid in a cage and it turns out it was under Obama, you delete it. If you really cared, you would have said, yeah, that was a damn disgrace then too. But you only care in the context that you use those children's suffering to go after your political opponent. That's all the more you care about it. You say you care about environmentalism. You don't care at all. You live in gated communities with 3 houses and fly on private jets. Yeah, John, I mean, that's a great point, too. The crazy, insane Black Lives Matter people and Richard Spencer, they're both welcome on CNN, as long as it could be used to smear Trump. They'll buddy up to racists, no problem. No problem at all. As long as it could be used for the greater good of attacking Trump. We have to start fighting. Like, Trump's made allusions to this. Why are the Republicans saying, we're going to immediately start defunding colleges and universities? Done. They're propaganda outlets. Our taxpayers shouldn't be going to teach our kids to hate us and our country, period. It's a waste of money. And it's an industry that's putting out people that are unprepared to enter the job force in a meaningful way and is making them basically indentured servants for life. Did you ever watch the show Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe? It's a good show. I liked it. I think it was on Discovery Channel. But Mike Rowe now, he has like all sorts of, he tries to do good, has scholarships, donations for people to go to tech schools. He encourages young people, if you don't want to go to college, don't waste your money going. Do something, learn a skill. My brother-in-law, right? He makes way more money than me, way younger. How old is he? Mid-20s? You know what he did? He didn't go to college like me and get in debt. He learned to weld. Fantastic career without the debt. I had friends that became truck drivers. Friends that went immediately to work in, like, carpentry. They're doing better than me financially. That's not a woe is me story. That's, instead, if we didn't have a narrative that was encouraging so many people to go into these indoctrination chambers that are getting incredibly wealthy based on governmental subsidies and incredible tuition costs that make these kids indentured servants for life. So why aren't we denouncing that in the narrative, and why aren't we denouncing it in terms of cut off those subsidies? I say that as someone who has a master's degree and is applying to be a professor. And yes, I'm sure comments like these hurt me from getting jobs and callbacks. That's fine. It's the truth. If we really care... Now, that's not to say, oh, you know, the people that, like me, that got the student loan debt, that I'm off the hook. No, not at all. I knew what I was doing. I was an adult. Right? But still, why aren't we supporting this? I can't remember the guy's name now, but what about the guy testifying in Capitol Hill about how Google has the power to change 17 million votes? 17 million in the 2020 election. Where are the Republicans fighting back on this? Where are they? I've heard Ted Cruz talk about it, which, by the way, his stock has been going up and up with me. I like Ted Cruz. Couldn't stand him. Well, I won't say couldn't stand. Wasn't a big fan going into the 2016 election. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's just doing a good job of putting on a show. But I've liked where he's going. Yeah, WZ, more trade schools. Absolutely. Real jobs that could help the country. That's what we need. Not social justice degrees. We're literally subsidizing people to hate our country. We're subsidizing people to be socialists or Marxists. We're subsidizing people to be cultural identitarians, cultural Marxists, to hate people based on their skin color or based on their gender or based on their sexual preference. That is what we're doing. We're subsidizing it. I have a friend that I want to talk to about this because he's researched it and he disagrees with me. But my research of this shows, when did tuition costs, if you look at a graph, right? Tuition cost versus general inflation. So general inflation, it's going up and up like this. Tuition costs go like this. They're rising much higher than the cost of inflation. Well, why? Well, because the government got into the game of guaranteeing student loans. So now there's no risk whatsoever to issue a student loan. You're guaranteed your money by the government. It's one of the only things you can't get out of through bankruptcy. And so what happened? Well, as soon as that started out, tuition costs go up and up and up and up and up. Is the quality of education getting better? Are we hiring more professors? No. You know who we're hiring? Way more administrators. So before you might have like one administrator for every 15 employees. Now you got like 5 administrators for every 15 employees. In the span of 30 years. What's changed that we need 5 times the amount of administrators? Like I said, Silicon Valley, the corruption can happen there. We give up on the narrative. We give up on fighting back against this narrative. We give up on going on the offense. That's why I put that video out, right? Demand, if you're a Republican, if you voted for a Republican, your representative, what are they doing right now? They voted against impeachment? Okay, that's nothing. Of course. They gave a good speech? Sure, okay. Why aren't you out there every day talking to the people? You ought to be going on Jake Tapper's show, and Hannity's show, and Rush Limbaugh's show, and Maddow's show if she'll have you, and Chuck Todd's show. Everywhere. You ought to be going everywhere. It's the single biggest issue. There is a coup going on in our country right now. And I hope you're right, Bradley. I hope more Republicans do start fighting. I'll tell you this, I look at my representatives, I'm not impressed. I call their office, I get crickets for response. I offer to help for free, no response. Or maybe I'm told, hey, do you want to hang up yard signs? Which is why I will be running in 2020. Because when the chips are down, when there's the greatest threat to our country, that should be when you're most vocal. We should be electing people that are willing to fight for this country passionately, competently, to willing to fight back against this narrative that's controlled by the deep state. Not people that will do the bare minimum to ensure they upset the least amount of people so that they get reelected. Matt Gaetz is dope. That would be a good one. Absolutely. It's not a career. That's not why you're supposed to get into Washington. You're supposed to get there because you love the country. Like the Founding Fathers, the idea was you didn't even want to go. It was like serving in the military in a way. You were probably a landowner. You had a farm. It hurt you financially to actually go and be a representative. But you felt you were helping your country. You cared about the country, so you went. You couldn't wait to get back home to your family and to your farm. Or your livelihood, whatever it was. Now it's a free ticket. You got your Schumers and your Pelosi there 30, 40 years. 2022, WZ. It would be too late and too difficult for me to run in 2020, but it will be 2022. By the way, as I'm running, you'll get to hear the Republican Party will not be impressed with me, even though I'll be running as a Republican, because their thing that is basically wait your turn. Well, I'm sorry. I'm willing to not run if I can say the people that have the position are doing a great job. And there are things they do that I like, but yeah, I agree, Blase. It is the beard. Ted Cruz. Biden 2020. Biden doesn't have a chance to win the nomination. So the last thing I'll talk about here is I bag on the Democrats a lot. But I say often there are establishment forces on the right that are bad as well, right? Yeah, I am going to run in 2022. And it will be for Congress in my district here. Unless I would decide to run for Senate if I talk to the proper Republican. The truth is, I would do better. My ideal situation and district to run in would be a district that was not so heavily conservative. And the reason is this. I don't have the absolute most... the special election I ran in was the most conservative district in Pennsylvania. My position's on gay marriage. I'm not life begins at conception type guy. So those types of things hurt me. If I ran in a district where there were some Democrat voters, I totally could convince Democrats and different groups such as young people, such as inner city people, why the Republican Party is the right party for them. And I would be much better in an area like that. But I'll run in the district that I'm at, that I live in, that I've lived in my whole life. Though we keep getting districted. But I've basically lived in a 20-mile radius my whole life. How am I going to keep myself from not being biased? Well, everyone's biased. It's impossible to keep yourself from not being biased. But there are principles that you can hold that make sure that bias doesn't put you in a bad place. So, for example, when I was running for this special election, one of the first things I said I would do if I won the nomination was to talk to the Democrats, even though I was running as a Republican. And the reason for that is, if I win, I represent the Democrats as well. And it's important that they know that. And it's important that they know, even though I'm not in the same party as them, I'm here to help every one of my constituents. That doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with them. But I want to let them know that their opinion's valued. And maybe they'll say something that I agree with. Now, what sets me apart, I think, is I've done so much time. I actively seek out talking to people that disagree with me, that I believe in my positions and I'm able to defend my positions quite well. So I'm not going to get in there and instantly flip-flop like Joe Biden, who was for the Brady bill for how many years and then just decided based on a call to Alyssa Milano to switch their mind. That won't happen with me because I'm constantly challenging my beliefs and ideas with people that disagree with me. I know you might not believe this, but I have tons and tons of friends that I have. Absolute Trump haters, absolute socialists, completely despise my political beliefs. But we're friends and we have discussions and I believe they're good people. They're misguided, especially when it comes to cheering for the intel community and things like that, but I digress. But they're good people. So I'm constantly challenging myself. Maybe I will be corrupted like the rest. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? I don't know. All I can say is I'll try my best. I have hours upon hours of material to see if I'm a flip-flopper, if I'm changing my mind or anything like that, so I could be held to account quite easily if I end up being corrupt. Why don't I run as an independent or a libertarian or something like that? Or NPA, is that what? Non-party affiliate, yeah. I tried to once. I tried to run as a libertarian. So let me give you the bare bones of it, because I could talk for hours about this. I do not have the financial resources, the time, or the know-how to be able to run a campaign completely on my own. So, for example, I tried to run as a libertarian. I was going to refuse to accept financial donations. That was part of my plan, because you have to fill out financial paperwork of your donations that you receive every month. I was told that I still had to start a LLC, I believe, or some sort of organization, name myself as president, vice president, treasurer, secretary. Then I would have to fill out the paperwork for donations every month, even if I was not receiving donations, because what the two major parties would do, they would sue to keep me off the ballot, even if I got the signatures to be on the ballot, because they would say, By not filling out that paperwork, I actually did receive donations to my friends, like if they would help me make a sign or something like that. And they were things of value, so therefore I had to fill out that paperwork anyways. Now, I think you don't have to fill out the paperwork unless you raise over 10 or 50,000 or something like that. But basically, I was told by the time the lawsuit hits you and the money you'll have to spend defending yourself in the lawsuit, and the time the lawsuit was over, the election will basically be done, and you won't have time, especially if you're operating the campaign on your own, to go out there and do all this. So the chances of winning as a non-party affiliate, just the logistics of getting on the ballot and going through that rigmarole are so over my head. Now, if I was independently wealthy and I could afford to hire an attorney or an accountant to help me with that, or afford to have a team, that would be one thing. But I don't. And I don't want people to, send me that amount of money that would make me successful. Let's see what else is in. So, Casey, yeah, I mean, I'll get to you in a second, Casey. Oh, that's awesome, John. Yeah, I mean, it's beyond me. I'm not a treasurer. I've never been a treasurer of anything. I've never been an accountant. So, when I ran as a Republican, it's kind of, everything's built into the cake. So, you have to, there's downsides of it. Now, don't get me wrong. I like a lot of my local Republicans. I like a lot of the people that I met. And I am a Republican. I align more. The truth is, none of us will ever find I say this all the time. What are the chances of you ever finding a person that totally agrees with you on everything? If you're someone who thinks for themselves, probably zero. So what are the chances of you finding a political party that agrees with you on everything? Probably also zero, unless you make your own party, right? So I'm more Republican than not. That's why I ran as a Republican. Now, there are problems with that, because when you run as a Republican, then there are, right, like, there are inner working politics. There could be things like nepotism. There could be things like favoritism. There's a game. And I knew that, but it became more evident as I participated in it. It's tough for me to say your name because it's just a series of dashes, so I'll just say Dash. It says, I'll be corrupt. I'm filling out the paperwork to be in the clique. You can determine how you want. I don't think I'll be corrupt. Maybe I would be. Maybe you think I am just trying to be in the clique. I don't know. What I would say to you is, this is something that I would say to extreme left-wing people I met all the time, which is, there's this idea, this like postmodernist critique of government that says, oh, to get involved in the government is to be corrupted by the government. So what's the alternative? To withdraw? If we don't run, if regular people don't run and win, yes, there are dangers with running for office. Yes, there are dangers with being in a political party. But if you concede that and are happy to just back out and leave other people win, guess who will fill that spot? The exact people you don't want to fill that spot. So I choose to be involved. That's my choice. If you choose not to, that's fine. So Casey, yeah, the idea that people believe they're doing the greater good. I agree with that. I think that most people don't think they're the bad guy. I really don't. Even bad people think that. Like Stalin and Mao probably didn't view themselves as bad people. They probably, till their dying breath, thought they were doing what was best for the country. Potentially hundreds of millions of their own people killed, but they thought it was for the greater good. And so it's difficult. That's why I always say, even people that you're highly suspicious of, you should always assume that they have good intentions. And here's my little formula I use. There's 4 possible situations you could have, right? You're interacting with someone. Do they have good intentions or do they not? And do you treat them as if they have good intentions or do you not? So let's assume you're about to interact with someone. You're going to your Thanksgiving dinner, right? And you know that someone there is a big Trump hater. And you're going to have a conversation with them. So you make the decision. You're going to assume they do not have good intentions. So, there's 2 possible outcomes in that world. 1, you're correct, they don't have good intentions. Okay. You don't win anything for being right by that. Or 2nd, they did have good intentions. Now, you've totally ruined what could have been a productive discussion, relationship, because you falsely assumed they had bad intentions. Now, let's assume you're going to meet that same person and you assume they have good intentions. There's two possible outcomes. One, they don't have good intentions. Okay. You wasted your time dealing with them assuming they had good intentions. No big deal. But what if they did have good intentions? Now you've had a meaningful discussion, conversation, relationship where actually you can start to see maybe you have disagreements, but those disagreements, you have the same goals. It's just you disagree on how to get there. You want people to be happy, successful. You want the country to do well. You want people to be healthy. You want people to have good jobs. You want people to have independence, etc. It's just how do we get there? But the only possible way you're going to have a meaningful conversation is if you assume good intentions. That's all you can control is how you act. So if you start under the assumption this person I'm about to interact with has bad intentions, nothing productive will come out of it. So even still, now there are people I assume have bad intentions. In a sense. Not really. There are people I assume, it's not even that their intentions are bad, it's people I assume that are willing to engage in corruption. But even they probably think they're doing it for the greater good, like your Nancy Pelosi's. Like, for example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wants total control of power, right? That's what she wants. She wants massive government that controls the entire energy sector, the entire economy. She wants the ability to punish people for using the wrong pronouns, etc., right? That's what AOC wants. Deep down, I don't think AOC's thinking, I'm a corrupt individual, screw everyone. She's thinking, this is what the greater good would be. Probably true of people in Antifa as well. It's scary, it's wrong, but they probably have good intentions. So you need to be able to deal with people on that level. If I got elected, I'm not just going to go in there guns a-blazing being like, you know, you're all evil, blah, blah, blah. I think I will say corruption should be investigated. One of the first things I would suggest is the slush fund that was used to use our tax dollars to pay off sexual assault allegations. All the names should be released. That slush fund should be disbanded immediately. Every payment that was released should be made public. Right, John, and here's the problem with communists, right? Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot. Better yet, Milton Friedman talks about this. God help us, God save us from the well-doing man who wants all the power because he knows he could do good. Those are the most dangerous people in many cases. Because the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Stalin wanted all the power because Stalin knew if I have all the power, I can make this country work. But he couldn't. And then problems started to arise. And people started saying, we don't want one guy with all the power. So he killed those people. But it was for the greater good. That's always the problem. And I've talked about this before. The problem with my last live stream, I talked about this. The problem with government power is once you give the government power, it's near impossible to take that power away. So the Patriot Act's a good example. You pass the Patriot Act, right? Let's say the day after the Patriot Act passed, we look at two possible outcomes. 10 years later, not one terror attack. Do you think the government will say, okay, we no longer need the Patriot Act. We don't have terror attacks anymore? Nope. They'll say, yes, see, the Patriot Act worked. Got to keep it going. Now, let's say we pass the Patriot Act and we have terrorist attacks triple over the next 10 years. Do you think the government says, well, the Patriot Act didn't work. We took away your rights and it was ineffective, so we'll just do away with it. No, they'll say, see, we need more control. Thus, the excuse is always used for giving the government more power. Oh, hey, what's up, Jojo? That's my brother, by the way, Jojo. But that's the problem with communism and things like that. Problems always arise. The government's never going to spend your money as well as you can spend it yourself. When you give them more power, there's always bureaucracy, there's always ineptitude, there's always corruption that occurs with government, which means the more power you give them, the more potential there is for that power to be abused. It's just the way it is. You don't like crony capitalism? You know what's worse? Crony communism. The bigger the government we get, the more that allows... Like, people say lobbying's a big problem. Why? If the government didn't have hardly any power to regulate businesses, why would lobbying be effective whatsoever? Okay, you gave a politician money, and that politician has no power to do anything to help you. The reason lobbying is a problem is because that politician does have things they could do to help you. They could let you out of regulations that are harmful to you. They could enforce regulations on your competitors. They could overlook corruption that you're engaged in, etc. Yeah, Casey, that's a great analogy. The EU's the same way. I mean, the EU was supposed to basically be a trade deal. Now, all of a sudden, if Germany decides to take 10,000 people from Syria, they're allowed to go into Britain. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Well, we just need more power. We need more control. All of a sudden, the laws you're voting for in your country don't matter. Bureaucrats you didn't elect in Brussels are now writing the laws that affect you in your life. And any time a problem comes up, what do they say? What did the Remainers say? All of these problems are because we need to be part of the EU. Every problem we have is because we need more of the EU. They never say less. It's impossible. Well, not impossible, but it's very difficult to end that problem. Now, anyways, I started on this rant talking about how there are establishment Republicans that are just as bad. So you've seen the stories this week probably about McCain and Rubio. The McCain story is the IG report showed that McCain, even after the FBI terminated its contact with Christopher Steele, McCain was talking to Christopher Steele and getting at least 5 times getting information that he was then feeding back to the FBI. I've also seen, but not been able to independently confirm, allegations that actually McCain and some other Republicans were initially being investigated for potentially financing kind of this type of Steele work, dossier work. Let's see. Yeah, that was funny, Jojo. So that's what we saw with that, right? Like, we saw them being able to do that with McCain. Now, we've known this for a while, but now it's breaking. It was in the IG report, and we knew that this was evidence that there were certainly establishment people in the Republican Party that hated Trump. The truth is, and I was told this today on a Twitter thread when I was complaining about the left, more than left-right, it's establishment versus non-establishment, outside the establishment, and that's absolutely true. The reason that no one is ever held to account for corruption in Washington, I liken it, and I don't have proof of this, but to me, I envision it like the movie Serpico. If you've never watched Serpico, stop listening to me right now and go watch Serpico. It's a fantastic movie, an Al Pacino movie, but it's based on a true story of this cop, I believe it was in New York, who basically saw a bunch of corrupt cops taking bribes, things like that, and he decides basically to be a whistleblower and to out this, and he ends up getting shot in the face. Pretty good evidence that the cops set him up, that he was kind of whistleblowing about. But anyways, there's a scene in Serpico. You also see it if you haven't seen that. Maybe you saw, I think it was The Dark Knight, the first Christopher Nolan Batman, or Batman Begins, I guess it was, where the dirty cops are trying to give the clean cops bribe money. They're like, here, take some of the money. Now, why do you do that? Because if you know that your partner also took bribery money, then the chances of your partner ratting you out for taking bribery money is much lower. And I think we see a lot of that in the establishment. There's all sorts of corruption that goes on at the highest level of our political system, the unelected bureaucrats, the elected lifelong officials, the military-industrial complex, the corporate people that are funding all of this, the media people, etc. There's a lot of corruption going on there. And so you don't want to point the finger at your quote-unquote opponent because they could point the finger back at you. And so you just kind of roll with the punches. There's this kind of gamesmanship. You pretend to dislike each other, but you're not really going to bring out the big guns. I remember years ago there was a big, hubbub because I'm trying to think exactly what it was. I think it might have been Johnny Damon when he was on the Red Sox, and like David Ortiz was seen out at dinner with like Derek Jeter right before they played this big game. Yet Red Sox and Yankees players out together. And the truth is, it's like, look, some of these players, even though the fans hate each other and the teams hate each other, some of the players are friends with each other. So they hate each other when they're on the field, but, I think that it's a lot like that. You get these disagreements between the establishment Republicans and Democrats, but in reality, they're the same team. And their number one interest is maintaining power. So what jeopardized them more than anything, they didn't care if Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton won. They didn't care if Marco Rubio or whoever, I don't know, Bloomberg wins. They don't care. Those are all people they know that are involved in the game. But Trump and maybe possibly Bernie were considered potential outsiders. It doesn't matter if they really would have been outsiders. They could have been elected and been like, hey man, no, I'm all in on this game. That's not what mattered. What mattered was this was the first election in a long time where there was a chance that someone could be elected to the highest position of power that wasn't going to kowtow to them, whether it be Bernie or Trump. So what they did with Bernie, they screwed him over in the primary. Now Bernie since capitulated to them. He took his second lake house. He stopped talking about the corruption that was issued against him. He's became a company man. He's cheered for the intel community's attacks of Trump. He's virtually, even after being one of the, supposedly on paper, one of the staunchest, we need to end these terrible wars, right? This guy, anti-war guy, right? He's out there saying the biggest foreign policy mistake Trump made. You ready? What was it? Drum roll, please. Bernie Sanders says the biggest foreign policy mistake Trump's made was trying to pull out of Syria. Isn't that funny for an anti-war guy? Now he couldn't be more pro-war. So he did it. He self-flagellated. He said, please, masters of the Democratic Party, I'll do your warmongering bidding. I'll cheer for the intel agencies. You can trust me. But at the time in 2016, they didn't know that. So out with him. And then they assumed the only reason we got Trump was their hubris. They controlled the narrative so much. They assumed Hillary had it in the bag so much that they didn't engage in all of the corruption they otherwise could have to ensure the win. So, I mean, that's what we see. That's what Trump was. That's why McCain, that's why Jeff Flake, that's why Rubio, that's why you see all these establishment Republicans, Jeb Bushes of the world. That's what was going on. So is it any surprise McCain was involved in this at a high level? I'm sure his daughter will come out and apologize, though. Remember when she said people were smearing her dad by saying that? Well, it turns out it was true. Then Rubio came out and he said, actually, the FBI was correct in wanting to get a FISA application at Carter Page. Based on what? So Marco Rubio, I get, and this is going to be Rubio's argument. Well, the allegation was so serious. The allegation came from someone that we know had about no credibility. The FBI knew that Christopher Steele had no credibility, knew that his facts were unverified, knew that he was rabidly anti-Trump, knew that he was paid by Hillary Clinton, knew that the guy they were talking to, Carter Page, was an asset for the CIA that helped bring down Russians. Yet despite all of that, Marco Rubio says, yep, we should have got a FISA warrant to spy on him because I guess the implication's so much. So I'm here to say, I heard that Rubio's working with the Chinese government. Okay, I guess Marco Rubio would agree we need to get a FISA warrant against Marco Rubio then, right? According to his own logic. That's a serious allegation. What? Marco Rubio's working with the Chinese? Okay. Let's spy on him and the people connected to him then. Only fair, right? I'm sure Rubio would agree. Oh no, it's always different when it's them, right? That's a prominent Republican. That's someone before 2016 people thought had a serious shot to be a Republican nominee for president someday. He'll probably still try in the future. He's establishment through and through, just like McCain and Jeff Flake. The point is, it is true that it's the establishment more than it's establishment versus non-establishment more than it's left versus right. However, that doesn't mean that the establishment left isn't the face of it. They certainly are. The establishment Democrat Party, the thing that's different that separates the Republicans and Democrats, the Democrats have always been far better at maintaining a consistent message. As one goes, all go. That's why the vitriol against AOC. Again, I've said this a million times. It's not that Pelosi doesn't like AOC's plans. They both want the same thing. They both want massive government control for the Democratic Party. It's just that Pelosi understands it's not popular to tell people that. You need to do it incrementally. AOC doesn't understand that. So AOC's hurting her party's chances of winning. So Pelosi's upset about that. But the reason that that's so stark to people is because this never happens in the Democratic Party. The Republican Party's constantly had, you got the Tea Party wing, you got the neocon wing, you got all these different types of conservatives. The Democrats are just Democrats. They're always on point. It's also kind of amazing, given the history of that some of them voted against the impeachment articles. Yeah, I mean, Rubio does seem to be tough on China, though. I guess until he gets a payday maybe from them, huh? Who knows? But that's what we see. So what I wanted to finish up with is, so it's establishment versus anti-establishment. Certainly those of us on the right that are conservative, we get it harder, right? Like this is one of the things I find so funny about all these people on the left that I was talking about that I like, the Michael Tracys, the Jimmy Dores, the Glenn Greenwalds. And again, I disagree with them on a lot, but at least they have integrity and they haven't sold themselves out to cheer for the intel agency's corruption. If Trump gets impeached, does that mean his term didn't count and he can go for 2 more? I do not believe that's true. I looked that up at one point and I don't think it's true. First off, he would have to be more than impeached. I believe he would have to be removed from office for that to possibly gather. Because Clinton was impeached and he wasn't eligible for a 3rd term. I thought that if you're removed from office under impeachment, that you were not allowed to serve public office again. So he wouldn't even be eligible for a 2nd term. But I could be wrong. So yeah, I mean, certainly one of the things with Jimmy Dore and them and Glenn Greenwald that I have a problem with is, they'll lament the treatment of Tulsi Gabbard or lament the treatment from the mainstream media of Bernie. And they correctly call out when the mainstream media is crap or the intel agency's crap against Trump. But it's like they don't put it in context. Yes, Bernie to some extent got screwed over by people in the media and the intel community. Certainly Tulsi has. But it is a pittance compared to what's happened to Trump. Every day, 95% of the media coverage is anti-Trump. Almost the entirety of academia, anti-Trump. Almost the entirety of the entertainment industry, anti-Trump. Almost the entirety of Silicon Valley, anti-Trump. Almost all the accounts that are getting banned off Twitter are conservative or Trump supporting. Almost all the things that are getting demonetized on YouTube are conservative or Trump supporting. Yes, there are left-leaning people that are lumped in there, and we should be allies with them. People that are left-leaning, maybe they're even like social justice warrior type people, but they're against this corruption. They get screwed over too. And yes, it is important to point out it's not just right-wing people. But let's not kid ourselves. We know who the bulk of the abuse is against. What we need to do is understand that there are allies out there on the left and the right. Here's the truth of the matter, right? Again, I'm Republican. I'll run as a Republican. I will. I'm going to say something the Republican Party doesn't want to hear. If the Republicans won every seat, every single seat, I would run as something else. Because we need at least 2 vibrant parties. At least. Sometimes I feel like we don't have any parties looking out for the interests of the American people. We need at least 2. Maybe more. You need opposition. You need someone to push back. That's why I like having friends that disagree with me. That's why I like having debates and arguments and disagreements with people. Because without it, you get complacent. You get flat. You get sterile. So we need competing parties. You need that. The Democratic Party is beyond hope at this point. They are the party of corruption. They are the party of identity politics. They're the party of cultural Marxism. They're the party of neoliberalism warmongering. They want perpetual war with Russia. They will defend the weaponization of the FBI and the intel agencies. Okay, yeah, John there knows more about it than me. Says there's 2 possible penalties. It's up to the Senate to decide what to do after they vote in favor. They won't, which is right. They would have to vote for removal. But apparently you could vote for removal or to bar from ever holding office again. So I guess they would have to see what direction they went with it. Or both, it says. So. But the reason I'm saying this is, look, you need to seek out the corruption that we're facing, the coup attempt against Trump, the coup to take over our country, which has been largely successful up until Trump, and still in many ways successful. They control the public narrative, like I said. They controlled the levers of power in Washington. All these foreign regime change wars, all the bailing out the banks, all the screwing over you, the average person, whether you're in the inner city or you're in the rural place or you're in the suburbs, regardless what your skin color is, regardless what your religion is, the reason you don't have a voice, the reason it seems like every year your money's worth less and less, the reason it seems that you have less and less freedoms. This corruption from the corrupt establishment or deep state or whatever you want to call it, that is the number one goal, to out that. So why aren't we working together with people who we might disagree with on other issues that also want to end that corruption? I would love to sit here in a world with you where we're having a discussion about the Republicans' economic plan versus the Democrats' economic plan. And you have good faith that both sides really care about their constituents. You just disagree with them. But none of that's possible until this corruption's ended. None of it. I say this over and over. This is why I'm constantly saying this. I'm trying to get allies from different areas where I say, I don't care what your issue is. Name your issue. What is it? Maybe you're on the right and your issue is the Second Amendment. Okay. Maybe you're on the left and your issue is climate change. Okay. Maybe you're on either side and pro-choice or pro-life's your big issue. Okay. I'm here to tell you none of those issues matter in the sense that if your voice is only allowed to pick from what these corrupt, unelected bureaucrats, like those in the FBI, like the Jim Comeys or the Brennans of the world, allow you to pick from, then your issue doesn't matter. Because the moment the Brennan or Comey or whoever's running the show decides, we don't care about climate change anymore, then they'll just change their mind. That's why no matter what your issue is, even if you hate Trump, your number one goal should be fighting back against this corruption. So many of my friends on the left, when I first met them in college, were anti-war. I was a Ron Paul guy. I was anti-war. I was against the Iraq war. Do you really think, if you're one of those friends out there listening to me now, do you really think that the left's ever going to put forth, the Democratic Party's ever going to put forth a successful anti-war Democrat at this point? Look what happened to Tulsi. Who, again, with Tulsi, it's hard for me to feel bad for her. She cheered for it. She said she wanted an impeachment investigation of Trump. She wanted an investigation of Kavanaugh. But when it happens to her, she's like, oh my God, Hillary said she said that I'm a stooge of Russia. Russia wants me to win. How dare she? And no problem when the media and the Democrats were saying that about Trump for 3 years, though, did she? Didn't speak up then. So it's hard to feel bad for her, but still. She's someone who seems anti-war. Think she's got a chance? No. Yeah, and it is, globalism is what this establishment wants. Because what is globalism? It's bigger, more consolidated government. More power for them. Again, all you have to do is look at San Francisco or LA to see what their end goal is. They want a return to feudalism. They want a globalist government where there aren't national borders, where there is no middle class. The middle class is the biggest impediment to that. They want you totally reliant on them. They want to live in castles on the top of the hill while they throw you breadcrumbs and you're totally reliant on them. That's what they want. So we should be reaching out. So like when I'm tweeting, of course, I got a small following. It's hard for me to have a voice. I'm trying my best. But when I'm trying to reach out to these people on the left, I'm like, come talk to me. Come on my show and talk to me. Maybe I can convince you. You might still walk away hating Trump. You might still say, I'm going to vote against Trump. But I want to let you know why fighting this corruption is the most important thing. When I'm tweeting at Michael Tracy or Jimmy Dore or Glenn Greenwald, these people that hate Trump, but they're like supporting Bernie, even though they're against the intel agency's corruption. Name me one candidate. The only candidate that's even close to speaking out for the Democrats against this corruption is Yang. No, there's things about Yang I don't like. Like, he'll tax meat out of existence, and his plan would be you're not allowed to own a car. It would be devastating where I live. There is no public transportation. So stuff like that is nonsense. But at least he came out in the last debate and was like, this impeachment crap's nonsense. Trump wasn't elected because of Russia. That's not what's going on. It's because people were disenfranchised about Trump. That's the correct response. If the Democrats actually cared, they would say, look, we think Trump's a buffoon. We think he's an outlandish and boorish character. We don't like his personality at all. We think his policies have been bad for the country. But we totally understand why voters would vote for him. Because we dropped the ball. Both parties dropped the ball. The quality of life in this country has been going downhill. The middle class has been shrinking. Jobs have been disappearing. Even if you think the economy is better under Trump, we could do a better job. That's a message. Well, let's get to the specifics. Fair enough. But that's a message I could get behind. Like, okay, I'll listen to that. You don't like each other, fine. You have disagreements on policy. But you understand the reason you lost was people were tired of the establishment. They were tired of voting the way they've been voting for years. So they would try to Hail Mary with Trump. So when I'm talking to those people, I'm saying, why do you support Bernie? What's Bernie done against this corruption? So what, we put Bernie in and then what? He just goes along with all the CIA wars. He goes along with all the FBI corruption. And that's good because what? Because he's a socialist and you like socialism? If there was a Democrat out there right now, or let's say in 2024, right? Let's say Trump wins re-election and the media and the FBI and the Dems do their song and dance and garbage again. And they're corrupt and they're investigating Trump for everything and blah, 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 right? And then the Republicans, for some reason, nominate in 24. They nominate Marco Rubio. Or they nominate Jeb Bush. And the Democrat nominee is someone that's like, I think the treatment of Trump was despicable. I think the intel community is incredibly corrupt. Why are we arming ISIS and other groups like that across the world, while at the same time we're taking away our rights back in this country to fight them? That would be a Democrat I would be behind. Because the corruption is the big issue. I wouldn't say, well, I like Jeb Bush's fiscal conservatism. It's irrelevant. If he's complacent or cheering for the corruption, then none of his other issues matter. That's where Bernie's at. Even if you like his free school for everyone, even if you like Medicare for all, it's irrelevant. It will never be allowed to be passed unless that's what the intel agencies want. As long as this corruption continues. Which means that it won't be effective to helping the average person, because that's not the agenda of the intel agency. If it was, we wouldn't be in these forever regime change wars, would we? We wouldn't be bailing out bankers. So find ways, like, look, never forget, 95% of what Occupy Wall Street believed, the Tea Party believed. Their goals were the same. They're both tired of corruption. They're both tired of cronyism. Occupy Wall Street wanted more of a socialist way to deal with it. The Tea Party wanted more of a fiscal conservative way of dealing with it, a libertarian way of dealing with it. We can have debates. I agree with the Tea Party, but we can have that debate. But those were two groundswell movements that if they realize, wow, we both agree on what the goal is. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Let's work together to end the corruption, and then we'll have the debate amongst ourselves, once the corruption's ended, of how to best go about achieving the goals we share. That's what we should be trying to do. So, all right, well, that's 2.5 hours. I could go. I've been trying to play chess lately. I'm so bad at it. But maybe I'll go play some chess, or I could clean the house while my wife's at work. That might make her feel better. But yeah, I mean, so the big takeaway today is if I had two takeaways, it would be this. The Democrats, wait, let me see what John said here. Yeah, I mean, here's the problem with Tulsi. I like Tulsi. I liked her as someone who seemed to not capitulate to the party, that seemed to stand on her own 2 feet. Let's talk about Tulsi for a minute, I guess, before I leave. Okay? The first thing with Tulsi was the Kavanaugh thing, right? Now, keep in mind, hey, what's up, Pacey? Yeah, Jojo, I'll play in chess. We both probably suck equally. So here was the deal with Tulsi. You remember the Kavanaugh, the newest smear? Let me just run it down for you real quick. Just Cliff Notes version, okay? Here we go. Someone who was a lifelong, or someone who had worked opposite of Kavanaugh during the Clinton impeachment hearings, who's a big Democrat person, came out and said he remembered hearing about at some college party where he was at a party and he saw Kavanaugh pull his pants down and someone grabbed Kavanaugh and shoved his penis into another woman's hand. Right? This was reported. Oh my God. Now, number one, if everything this man said is true, that means Judge Kavanaugh was sexually assaulted. We don't know the circumstances. Why were his pants down? Was he going to the restroom? Was it his house? Is he allowed to be? If it's his house, pull his pants down if he wants. Was there consent for him amongst people to pull his pants down? What was the context? We don't know. All we know from this story is his pants were down and someone grabbed his genitals. That's sexual assault. He didn't ask for him to grab his genitals, someone grabbed it. So instead of the story being like, okay, this person just told a story of Judge Kavanaugh being sexually assaulted, instead they said, no, Kavanaugh was the assaulter, he put his penis in this woman's face. Only problem was, this woman said, no, I wasn't a victim, this is garbage. And so what did the reporters do? They reported on this story? They outed that woman's name. Because hashtag believe all women, hashtag party of women, right? Except when the women don't go with their narrative to bring down someone like Kavanaugh, then they get smeared against their wishes, which is exactly what happened to this woman. So that story is a story where, based on the interpretation we're given, it proves Kavanaugh was assaulted, if we even believe it's true, and the alleged victim said the incident never happened and she wanted no part in discussing it. So an alleged incident that wasn't sexual assault with no victim anyways. And based on that, what did Tulsi Gabbard say? Well, I think that Judge Kavanaugh should have to recuse himself from decisions. There should be an investigation until we get to the bottom of this. That's what she said. Look it up. Now, what's especially egregious by this is Tulsi's been going through smears for years for things like meeting with Assad. Was she involved with Assad? Is she anti-American? Was she going against America's interests? She knows what these types of media smears are all about. Yet she actively cheered for it when it was against her perceived political opponent. Now, the impeachment investigation of Trump. Tulsi comes out and says, no, I'm not for this. I think it's dangerous to have the investigation. Then after being pressured by the media and the Democratic Party for 2 days, what does the noble, brave, great Tulsi Gabbard do? She caves in. She changes her mind and says, oh yeah, I guess we do need an impeachment investigation. Now, when she first said she was against it, she said, I read the transcript. I don't see anything in there that warrants an impeachment investigation. 2 days later, she changes her mind inexplicably and says it would be a dereliction of duty to not investigate. Then I'm supposed to say, oh, Tulsi's brave because she didn't vote for impeachment. She voted present. Because she saw the writing on the wall. She knew that eventually this is going to come back to bite all those that voted for impeachment. So now she could do what she should have been doing the whole way. If she was a person of principle, the strategic thing to do politically was this. She ain't going to win in 2020. But there's a solid chance that the Democrats are left in a steaming wreck after 2020. Because they've cheered for the corruption of the FBI. They cheered for corruption in the coup of the impeachment attempt. And so come 2024, there's going to need to be new blood. And who would be standing there? Tulsi Gabbard would say, I went against this corruption. I went against it. All the policies you people on the left like the anti-war policies, the kind of social justice-y stuff, I was for all that, but I was against that corruption. I was the only nominee that was against it. Now here I am. And think of the bona fides she would have had. But she didn't. She caved in. She caved into the media. She caved into the intel community. She caved into the Democrats. So that she could still have some clout in this election cycle, which she has no chance in. I said the day she did it, I was like, here's what Tulsi Gabbard should have said. I disagree with Trump. I think Trump's a terrible person. I think he says terrible things. I think a lot of his domestic policies have been disastrous. I think he's talked a big game about trying to get us out of these foreign wars, but what has he really accomplished? I think it was terrible that he bombed Syria. But having said all of that, the corrupt intel community that smeared me because I wanted to look for peace, because I wanted to stop arming groups like ISIS and Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda, is the same groups that are going after Trump with the same type of smears. This isn't me defending Trump or saying I'd vote for Trump, but I'll defend anyone, even people I disagree with as much as Trump, from attacks like this from corrupt intel official bureaucrats. If Trump would have said that, or if Tulsi would have said that, she would have looked so good after 2020. Unbelievably good. But she didn't. She gave in. Now she's trying to have her cake and eat it too. Oh, but I'll vote president. Oh, it's so brave. And I listened to the Michael Tracy's and the Jimmy Dore. How brave and stunning of Tulsi to vote president. No, it wasn't. She's a hypocrite. You know what would make her not a hypocrite? If she says, also, I'm calling for an impeachment investigation into myself based on conversations I had with Assad. I'm demanding that all the transcripts of my conversations with Assad be released. I'm demanding that people come and testify in Capitol Hill whether or not these conversations were potentially dangerous. And then we'll have an impeachment and vote on myself, and I'll vote president. That would make her not a hypocrite. Cheering for the investigation, cheering for the smearing of Trump, and then voting president when you know the votes are in the bag at that point doesn't make you brave. Yeah, I mean, you're right, John. But really, so the Dems are worried about that, but they're going to put Elizabeth Warren up? They're worried about her being a Hindu vegetarian? I mean, look at Elizabeth Warren. All the people they have are got crazy foibles. I think the thing that we see universally, what is it about Ron Paul, Dennis Kucinich, Tulsi Gabbard, that we're all got this same treatment, Trump? They were all perceived as anti-establishment, anti-foreign regime change wars. Bloomberg, yeah, I agree with you, John. I think that he is considered a moderate in case Biden's not going to be the nominee. And it's not just the corruption. It's clear he doesn't have the wherewithal. He just doesn't. I mean, the problem is, I've talked to Democrats who have assured me that if Biden wins, they will not vote. There are so many people that feel that the progressives got screwed in 2016 with the treatment of Bernie, that if they don't get a progressive, a Bernie, or at least an Elizabeth Warren, or someone like that, and instead they would get a Buttigieg, or a Biden, or maybe a Bloomberg, they ain't going to vote. So the Democrats got a huge problem because there's a lot of Democrats that ain't going to vote for Bernie. Maybe you're a big financial donor to the Democrats. Never forget, the narrative is, oh, wealthy people vote Republican. No, they don't. The Democrats are the party of the very poor and the very wealthy. Easily those with more money tend to vote Democrat at this point, with the hugest sums of money. Easily. Those people ain't going to be happy if they think there's a real threat that's why there's stories. Obama's been out assuring the millionaire class, don't worry if Elizabeth Warren's elected, she won't take all your money. So they have the cultural Marxism event, as predicted, starting to clash. You can't have groups that are diametrically opposed with each other be allied because evil white straight people are the worst forever. Something will happen. And so eventually the group of people that are like, we want total socialism and we hate the rich, and the extremely rich that are like, we want massive government power so that we could lobby and continue to maintain our wealth. Eventually they'll come to loggerheads. Yeah, I get you, Dash. You're right. But, so yeah, that's where I'm at with Tulsi. It's just a joke. But, you know, even with her hypocrisy, if she would come out and cheer against this corruption or speak out against the corruption, I would be for her. So, thank you everyone so much for listening to me. I really appreciate it. I'll put a link. This will come up crappily. If you check the description of my channel, or of this video, you can see a link to all my, that stupid stuff. Twitter and Patreon and stuff like that. What's going on here? So I'll put those all up. It comes off stupid, though. I hate the chat here. But I'll say again, I'm not, my weakest suit as a congressional candidate was, you get these, you talk to these, because it was a special election, you had conferees, and then you talk to the conferees, and so you do the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? You get your turn, you go in a room and talk to all these conferees by yourself. Then afterwards, all the candidates got to go in and talk individually to the conferees. And I was the worst. I'm not good at selling myself. I'm confident. I thought I was the right person for the job. But I'm not the type of person that's going to get in your face like, hey, give me money. Vote for me. I need your support. Oh, you're having a conversation with someone else? Here, let me wedge in. I just don't do that. That's not who I am. And I'm not particularly comfortable asking for financial support and stuff like that. All I'll say is I could use it. If you find yourself in a situation where you're tight on money or anything, please do not donate to me. Like and subscribe. That would be nice if you want to support me. Recommend my channel to someone else. Please do not feel that my channel's going to collapse if I don't get financial support. That is not the case at all. I assure you. So if you have extra money, and I will promise to use that money if you support me on PayPal or Patreon, use that money to ensure the quality of my videos are better, ensure that I'm putting out more content, getting stuff like editing software and things like that. But regardless, I'll be here either way. So I hate even, my wife picks on me all the time when I say like and subscribe. She's like, what a dork. But I guess it's something you got to do. So I really, you have no idea how much it means to me. At one point I had 17 people watching today. That might not seem like a lot of people. I did live streams for a year. I'd have 1-2 people watching. I am incredibly humbled that people, even there was that guy on here earlier, Duke of Jive. It's someone that made racial comments to me and stuff like that. I'm honored, though. Some of the chat comments he had I thought were reasonable comments, and I'm honored that people that disagree with me would come on and take the time to listen to me. So, really, it means a lot to me. I really appreciate you guys. I'll clean the house before I play chess. But really, you guys mean a lot to me, and I hope if you ever want to do a video with me, if you ever have any suggestions, please just email me. I'll type my email up. It's real simple. It's just my name, rob.noor@gmail. If you do a video with me, if you agree or disagree with me, my standing offer is we'll do it however you want. If you want to do a live stream, we will. If you want to do it pre-recorded, we will. If you would ever have a problem, like you accidentally said something on the video that you're afraid would, cost you a job or something in the future, if you contact me, I would remove the video. If you disagree with me, I'm not just going to scream at you or things like that. So, but I think I really want to try to get more people on and things like that. So I really appreciate everyone. I'm going to go let my dogs out and clean up the house some, and I'll probably be putting more videos out as the week goes on. So thanks so much and have a good one.